My wife's entitled homeless friend literally is refusing to move out of our house, as what was supposed to be a short stay of her living with us soon turned into about 5 months of her not moving out. And now I feel like I'm at the edge of my sanity and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I live with my wife somewhere in France. We're both close to our early 30s, and earlier this year, one of her close friends, who's a 30-year-old female, got dumped by her boyfriend and he kicked her out. She couldn't go to her mom because she lives with her grandma, and she said it was too stressful, but it could have been an option, but unfortunately they live like 6 hours away by car from us. But because my wife is very kind, she invited her to stay with us during our wedding prep. She then slept in our room for 3 weeks and the night of our wedding, and this really was supposed to be temporary, just until she figured things out. But guess what? It's now been like 5 months. She never said when she planned to leave, and I kept asking her to please look for a job, but every time it looked like she was gonna start, she went on vacation instead. We helped update her resume, and even sent her profile to a few companies, and trust me, if we had not done it for her, she would have lost her benefits completely. She only sent one resume on her own in like the last 10 months period. Now currently she lives in our living room, which by the way is half of our flat. She keeps the shutters closed all day until she wakes up, which sometimes can be as late as 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we literally have no natural light in our flat. My wife and I both work from home, and we do meetings from the kitchen on a stool because we do not want to wake her up. She almost never does dishes or cleans, and when she does, it's always half done. I told her many times I don't feel comfortable entering the living room when she sleeps, but nothing ever changes. A few months ago, I finally asked, okay, when are you leaving? And she looked at me confused and said, leaving what? And I said, the apartment. When are you leaving this apartment? She then said initially she was planning for September, even though I never heard a word about this, but now it's maybe October. And I gotta be honest, I was so relieved when I heard that because that talk absolutely was really hard for me to do. But then in mid-September, she left for a few weeks without telling us, leaving all of her stuff behind. She texted the morning that she was coming back that day, and I then asked her, okay, but then you're gonna leave right after that, right? But she said to me, what do you mean leave? And I reminded her of our talk. She then said that she didn't remember that talk, and then tried to claim that she had said that if she doesn't find a job, then she'll see what she can do during October, even though that conversation absolutely never happened. Well, we talked again recently, and I told her she uses ambiguity to her advantage, and that her silence is driving me crazy. When I said this, she cried a lot, but I still talked. I mean, I really tried to emphasize our feelings over hers during the conversation. I then made her acknowledge and tell me what she understood of the conversation, and I really felt like she understood exactly where we stand. Well, fast forward to today, and she still didn't give me a date. She just said to me, I think I'll leave next week and take my stuff in November. But this time I said, no, give me a date. And then after that, you're not living here. She then said to me, well, I don't know, which really pissed me off. And I told her that after the 1st of November, she won't be living here anymore. Now, she said okay, but later told my wife that she was leaving around November. And now I feel trapped in my own home, and I'm tired of this situation. I know we could have been more firm with her by establishing rules when she moved in, but seriously, am I the jerk right now for kicking this homeless friend out of my house? Because at this point, I feel taken advantage of and I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, no, you're not the jerk, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You should have established rules way in the beginning, dude, because this lady is no longer like a friend in my opinion. Like, no friend would actually do this, but instead a squatter or some kind of like freeloader absolutely would. She doesn't pay rent, she doesn't buy groceries, she doesn't do the dishes, she's barely even looking for a job. So the fact that she's trying to be like, oh, I don't know, I'll leave at some point, basically just waffling about and kicking the can down the road, like that is unacceptable and that absolutely would not stand for me. So no, you're not the jerk. This is the only sane option left, because this lady sounds a little bit crazy and I would definitely want her out of my house sooner than later. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Would I be the jerk if I report a homeless person in my off-campus accommodations? As I'm pretty convinced that they're the reason the smoke alarms keep going off, as they are constantly smoking all the time. Because right now I'm kind of worried that I might get in trouble if I say anything, and at this point I simply don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm a 19-year-old female and I live in an off-campus accommodation, and for approximately the past 2 weeks, I have been smelling cigarette smoke through my window on the first floor. In fact, I can smell it as I'm typing this post right now. Today there's been a series of fire alarms in the last last half hour, and when I came up to my room after the third alarm, where I was waiting in the cold with two of my flatmates by the way, I noticed a blanket and an umbrella in the staircase near the building's laundry room. I've previously attempted to get down through this staircase, but I've always been stopped due to this combination lock on it. Well, after a few seconds, I see the blanket moving, and then a tall guy stretching, lighting his cigarette. And yes, just so you know, smoking on the property is forbidden, and is most likely the reason for the constant fire alarms. I've texted the flat groundskeeper and most haven't responded, but the one that has said that she feels unsafe and that I should lock my window before going to bed. Now, I know the logical thing would be to tell the security. I mean, these fire alarms have been constant for the past week, and the smell of cigarettes is bad for my asthma as well, but the snitch culture is huge where I am, and I really just don't want to be that person because the guy's not done anything to me except for the smell and the fire alarms, and I really would feel guilty if he got outed and had to sleep literally on the streets. He may also get arrested for trespassing, which could cause him to lose his place at the university, you know, if he goes there, which he might do, because he seems to be about my age. This is probably very juvenile, but so far I've played the song by the title Home, as it mentions home and cigarettes, just so that the guy clues in that someone knows he's there and to stop smoking at least. I'm genuinely afraid that if he sees my face and finds out that I'm thinking of snitching on him, he might do something to me. Yelling down to him isn't an option. I mean, it would be very easy to figure out my exact room and location. So would I be the jerk if I reported him to security, despite knowing what this could do to him? Because right now I just don't know what to do. Dude, there is no excuse for this behavior. I'm sorry, but absolutely not. This guy literally is sitting there smoking cigarettes and causing all the fire alarms to go off. Like, I don't know about you, but Occam's razor says, oh yeah, maybe it's the guy smoking. You know, the homeless guy sleeping on the steps, smoking a cigarette anytime he wakes up. Like, yeah, that guy's gotta go. There are rules for a reason. This guy can't just be sleeping on the corner and smoking cigarettes in an off-campus building that literally doesn't allow that. That's stupid and selfish and absolutely unacceptable. So no, you're not the jerk for calling security. This guy's breaking the rules and causing problems for probably up to like 100 people. So you're telling me you would rather have this one guy sit there and keep doing what he's doing instead of just saying something and getting this guy out of there? Like, this isn't you being a snitch. It's not like you're keeping a really cool secret. Like, there's a homeless guy smoking cigarettes that's causing the alarm to go off. This is a public disturbance and he shouldn't be there. And that's not saying that, yeah, his situation sucks, but you have nothing to do with that. So no, you are not the jerk. You can easily make a private phone call about this and get this taken care of immediately. And trust me, this guy will never know it was you and you can move on with your life. Am I the jerk for warning people ahead of time that my sister is a compulsive liar? Because after my sister found out, she's now saying that I'm a jerk and that now everyone's gonna think she's a liar despite the fact that she really is one. Here's what's going on. So my sister just found out that I warned people that I know before they meet her that she is a compulsive liar. I love my sister a lot, but she has a serious issue with lying about everything all the time. Even dumb little things that don't make sense half the time. I can always tell when she is lying, but other people can't, and I don't want my friends or other people that I know to believe her when she lies about things that are big deals though. For reference, my sister is 26 years old. So whenever she says something that I know is a lie around my friends, they look at me and I shake my head no, and this is a system that I've set up. I don't call her out or embarrass her in front of other people, and they never say anything either, but instead they just nod and we move on. My sister isn't a bad person, and we both had very hard childhoods and went through a lot of trauma, so I give her grace and I ask that you do as well. I do know that a lot of her issues with lying comes from wanting attention, and the little lies don't really bother me and I ignore them, but the big ones are usually very problematic. Well, yesterday she met a coworker of mine who I had warned ahead of time that she lies a lot. She said something that was outrageous and my coworker looked at me and I just shook my head no and we moved on. Well, my sister saw it this time, and on the way back to my house asked me why sometimes I shake my head no when she talks, and it's here that I explain why, exactly as I did written above. I wasn't mean or cold about it, and my sister knows that I have an issue with her lying all the time already. Well, she thinks I'm a jerk now because now everyone's gonna think that she's a liar. So am I at fault for doing this? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk, although I can see why someone might think you're in the wrong, because seriously, your sister is lying about all kinds of stuff apparently, and I'm kind of getting the vibe that she's lying about everything, and that would probably include the original poster, which would then prompt them to be like, hey, my sister is full of crap, don't believe anything she says. Which, I mean, I would probably do the same thing if I had a family member who did that. Like, that would be obnoxious to try and manage. Always having people have different perceptions of you or your life, or even some false version of her life that she's trying to like portray to the outside public. public. Like, that sounds obnoxious, and I would absolutely warn people ahead of time. But I will say, her being 26 years old and still doing stuff like this, like, I can understand people having bad childhoods, but dude, come on. At some point, it's no longer an excuse to be like, well, I had a hard childhood, that's why I'm a compulsive liar as an adult. Like, no, take charge of your life, man. Go to therapy. Get some help or something. Like, this is not okay. You can't live your life like this and expect people to be happy about it. And I'm not trying to trivialize this. Like, I really do feel for her. Obviously, there has been some kind of problems in her life where she feels a need to make up her life and the details of it. But there's obviously something going on where it's like, okay, you probably need to talk to somebody, because it is not normal to lie about these big, grandiose things about your life. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. And honestly, I think this might be a good wake-up call for your sister, for her to realize that, yeah, I have to tell people ahead of time that you lie all the time, because that's exactly what you do. And hopefully this can prompt some kind of change, because what you're describing, in my opinion, is very sad. Today, I need to confess that I accidentally kissed my best friend's girlfriend at a masquerade party, putting me in a situation that I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's how it all went down. Okay, to put a long story short, our friend group was having a masquerade party. I decided to go last minute, so I had no idea what anyone was wearing except for my other friend, but honestly, that doesn't really matter. I get there incredibly late and there was a lot of people there. I'm talking up a lot of people, and I haven't really ran into any of my friends yet, but I didn't really care. I'm not ashamed to say it, but I was looking to hook up. I then found one girl all glammed up with makeup, a mask, a cool dress, and gloves, basically the works. And after a couple of drinks in, I didn't realize at the time that this was my friend. We were both yelling over the music, so I didn't quite recognize her voice. But it's like, whatever, I just didn't know, and she didn't know either. Well, very late into the party, after a lot of drinks, I'm thinking I'm the best man in the world, so I go for it and I kiss her. She then pushes me away, screaming that she's married, even though she's not married, and then she runs away. It wasn't until like a week later that we were gaming together on call, and we were talking about the party itself. She then sent me some pictures of the group, and I asked her who the person in red was, and she said it was her. And when she said this, I nearly died. That's when she said some green guy kissed her and she ran away. It's at this point I half-heartedly confessed that I was the green guy, and when I said this, she was pissed at me for weeks, but thankfully she never really told her boyfriend that it was me. And while she did confess that some guy kissed her, she never name-dropped me. And I know it wasn't on purpose that I kissed her, but I still feel horribly. Like I betrayed him in some twisted way. And what's even worse is that confessing it now would be a nightmare, because it happened so long ago and she never gave up my identity. Honestly, I've just been holding this in for so long that it's not even this horrible thing if you really think about it. But I still feel horrible and I just don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, I want to say that, dude, you are not the only person in the world to make some kind of dumb decision like this. For starters, you need to give yourself some grace. You didn't know it was her and you absolutely regret it later, which means that you're not a bad person. You just made a mistake and that's it. But I swear to you, if you ever bring this up to this guy, he absolutely will rip you a new one. This is one of those things that goes down to your grave, dude. Just don't mention it. Chalk it up as life experience that you need to keep a lid on it, because no one's ever going to react positively towards it. Like, your friends are not going to react positively and be like, oh, I understand, that's okay. Instead, they're most likely going to be super hostile towards you and probably treat you like garbage. And I don't know about you, but I'm not really in the business of dragging myself through the streets like I'm in Game of Thrones. But you do not need to have someone standing behind you screaming shame and ringing a bell so everyone can look. So yeah, dude, I totally understand that you feel bad, but just don't tell anyone about it. It's an innocent mistake that you're never going to do again. And I really believe that it's only going to cause problems if you bring it up in the future. Am I the jerk for being pissed off at my friend after they named their newborn child after my deceased child that I lost at 5 months being pregnant? Because right now I am very pissed off and I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, for a bit of context, back in 2024, my husband and I were expecting our first baby, but after being pregnant for 5 months, I had to have an emergency C-section because my baby was not surviving. And you know what? I was devastated and depressed after this. I'm still grieving my loss and I have a hard time being around babies and even just attending baby showers. Well, after being 2 months postpartum, my husband's cousin's girlfriend asked me if we could talk because she went through a miscarriage at 6 weeks and she wanted someone to talk to about her grief. Now, I was not in any shape or form to discuss the topic of pregnancy, and I did tell her I am just not the right person to be asking because I'm not in the best shape to talk about it. She then begged me because she needed mental help, so I gave in and I talked to her. But in my head, I'm angry because she was practically comparing how we both had similar experiences. She was also well aware of what we named our daughter too, by the way. We had chosen the name after myself and my husband. It was a combination of our own names. I mean, it was perfect. Her and I made Day of the Dead altars for our babies last year. We bonded, we got closer eventually, and then in January of 2025, she tells me that she's pregnant and can't wait. And mind you, I'm still grieving, but you know what? I'm happy for her. Later on, she finds out that she's having a baby girl. And then this August in 2025, she's told that she's having medical complications and will have to deliver sooner than expected. Her sister-in-law and I are planning a surprise brunch for her and also plan to set up a baby corner and clean her house. I then go over one day to take her fresh juice and this beautiful arrangement of flowers that I had ordered for her. She then goes into labor 2 days after I saw her, and eventually I go to the hospital, but I don't go into the room because seriously, I'm still grieving, but I want her to know that I'm there as well. 2 weeks pass by and my husband and I go to the friend's house to see the new baby. We take her homemade food, and I had ordered a bunch of things for her and her baby on Amazon that were going to be coming afterwards because she couldn't have a baby shower. So with all that in mind, we're sitting there and we're talking, and I finally ask her, what did you name your baby? She then says that she's gonna name her child after her great-grandma's names. And it's here that she laughs and her baby daddy also laughs as well, as he keeps saying, yeah, that's gonna be her name. Well, 3 weeks later, I'm doing her mother-in-law's hair, and I ask her about the baby, and I said to the mother-in-law that I think it's great that she's naming her kid after like family members. Well, she just laughed and said, no, they're not naming her that, which is right when my mother-in-law told me that they're using the name that my baby was gonna be named after. When I heard this, I freaked out. I said, that is the name of my baby. And when I heard this, as you can probably imagine, I was very pissed off. I went to her house the next day and I asked her why she chose that name. And she says to me, oh, I forgot. And it's like, what? I had the name tattooed on my arm. I also have that name in my Instagram bio. We bonded last year. She then said to me, oh, well, I don't know who told you the name. I told only 5 people and it was supposed to be a secret. You were not supposed to know. And I was just like, oh, well, thank you so much for sparing my emotions, but screw you. Because seriously, there's no way she would have ever forgotten it. Because if she had, she wouldn't have tried so hard to keep it a secret from me. So am I the jerk for being angry at her for using my kid's name? Because I think I'm right for being pissed off, but I just don't know what to do. Okay, seriously, someone said this best in the comment section, but I completely agree when they say that you need to exorcise this woman from your life like the soul-sucking demon that she is. Like, oh my gosh, this lady is so toxic. Like, she really took your baby's name and then lied about it and tried to be like, oh, it's something else, don't worry about it. You know, after claiming ignorance and being like, well, I forgot that's the name of your kid. Because seriously, let's be honest for a second. She absolutely knew about it, and the only reason she was hiding it was because she knew the original poster would be rightfully pissed off. So no, you're not the jerk here. I would be furious and I would never let this go. I would probably scream it from the rooftops if I had the chance to, because what this lady's doing is super toxic and completely uncalled for. Am I the jerk for not canceling my plans to attend my sister's wedding? As this wedding literally falls in place with a surgery I've been waiting to have for a long time. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I've heard varying opinions from people in my real life, so I'm now posting it here to try and get a second opinion. For a bit of context, I have 3 siblings and we're all in our 20s. Our oldest sister, who I will call Jane, is 29 years old and recently announced her engagement to a man we all knew, but no one really knew that she was dating. And the only place that she announced this was on Facebook. She claimed that she thought that none of us would see it, and actually had asked our father to let us know of the engagement. Her and our mother and father live in the small town that we all grew up in, which is less than 5 minutes away from each other, and the rest of us are in the East and West Coast respectfully. Now, for some reason, I ended up logging into a Facebook account on a night that I just simply couldn't sleep after getting back from a trip, and it's here that I saw the status update announcing their engagement between Jane and her fiance, who I will call Aaron for the sake of the story. I then called Jane the next day to congratulate her, and I let her know that I was slightly confused but still happy for her nonetheless. Well, Jane blew up at me after I expressed my confusion, which I did in a peaceful manner by the way, and ever since then we haven't really spoken to each other. Now, I have spoken to our father multiple times ever since then, and I have been informed that this is just how she behaves, and that I need to just suck it up and show up, but I really just don't care anymore, and neither do my other 2 siblings. The lack of communication has been really loud, and I don't care to unravel the layers of disrespect that have been happening here. The icing on the cake of this entire thing is that I have an important surgery planned for like the week before that will take weeks of recovery, and this is something that's been scheduled since the beginning of the year. But you know what? I'm not willing to reschedule my plans for a last-minute chaotic wedding of 2 people that can't even be bothered to communicate properly with anybody. I've let my family know that I'll do my best to make it, but the plans I've made come first, especially after all the planning that it took to take off that much time from work. So am I the jerk for not canceling my plans to make sure that I can show up to this stupid wedding? Because right now I really just don't know what to do. Okay, dude, this is so annoying. And not from the original poster, like, don't get me wrong. They're being completely rational and they're just trying to figure out what's going on. Like, the way your sister's acting is just so dumb. Seriously, first off, if you're gonna be engaged to somebody, the least you can do is at least let family members know that, hey, we're dating, we've been dating for a while, this is my boyfriend, or whatever. Like, even at a bare minimum, you would expect that to be some kind of, like, conversation, right? Wouldn't you want this guy to meet the family and be like, hey, we're a thing, this is a thing that's going on right now? Like, I don't know, that just seems super foreign to me to not have that kind of conversation and not involve them in the family in some capacity. So that's the first red flag in my opinion, but also the fact that she's freaking out about you being like, hey, congratulations, I'm so happy that you guys are engaged, this is great. Like, who would get mad at that? Like, if I saw my sibling was suddenly engaged on Facebook, I would be like, first off, congratulations, but also, what's going on right now? I didn't know you were dating, like, what's happening? Like, you can't just post something on Facebook and be upset when you get attention for it. Like, isn't that why you posted it on Facebook itself? You're looking for attention and you don't like the attention you're getting? Like, holy crap, Jane is so backwards in my opinion. So with all that in mind and all this like background, personally, I do not think you would be the jerk if you didn't cancel your plans, especially for a surgery. Like, I don't know what it's like for other people who have had like procedures done or like some kind of surgery, but dude, those dates are like set in stone. It is not easy to reschedule that, and it really sounds like you're going to be out of commission for several weeks, which is not something that's going to be easy to recover from. So on that end, I don't think you would be the jerk at all for being like, hey, I can't make it this time. Like, physically, you're not going to be able to be there, and it's like, sorry, I can't do it. So no, if I was in your shoes, I would definitely not cancel a thing. I would tell my sister, hey, I love you, I'll send a present, but I can't be there because I'm literally having surgery, which in my opinion, especially considering the way she was acting, takes a much higher precedent over this stupid wedding. An entitled man-child freaks out on me in the hotel lobby that I work in after the car valet isn't ready for him right when he demands it. And after some screaming and crying, as well as refusing to leave our hotel, I cancel his reservation and have the cops show up just to escort him off the property. Here's what happened. So I work the night audit shift. That's from 11 p.m. all the way up until 7 a.m. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite instances that I ran into because the amount of karma that gets thrown down back at the person bothering me is absolutely beautiful to behold. So let's get started. So most of my problems usually happen right at the beginning of my shift. It's when the late check-ins start finishing up, but only with the drunk and the rowdy, and the occasional late flight. This man was of the drunk and rowdy nature. He was middle-aged, looked like the typical Marvel fan, from the shorts, the shirt, the beard, and the glasses. He reeked of neckbeard. We all know the type. Now, I'm a nerd too, but I'm the kind that takes showers and has friends and boundaries. I don't work alone, but was alone at the front desk at the time, and he comes up just to complain to me. He is checking in and stating that valet wasn't there, and he has been waiting for 20 minutes. I call valet and find out he has only been waiting actually for 5 minutes, and assure him that they are finishing up with a couple of guests and will be parking his car momentarily. But he would not let it go. He starts going on a rant about my terrible customer service, how there has got to be something I should do for him to make up for this, how completely unacceptable he had to wait at a luxury hotel for the valet, and he thought that this was the whole point of us being luxury. Now clearly he hasn't been to a hotel in general, never mind a nice one. I told him I talked to the valet, and it's normal for people to have to wait for others who were there first. So with that in mind, there was nothing I could do about it. It wasn't even an amount of time that I could fake being sympathetic for. He was clearly just being a jerk. He then keeps demanding an explanation from me as to why he was waiting, now trying to tell me I am lying to him and they were clearly sleeping or on a break or something like that. He then tells me to just cancel his reservation. So I say to him, okay, no problem. The valet was ready for you, but if this isn't what you wanted, I will go ahead and just cancel it for you. So I do just that, and I hand him his printed cancellation, but still he won't leave. Now he's standing at the front desk just staring me down and repeatedly asking me why he had to wait for valet while also demanding that I admit that they were just sleeping on the job. And it was about at this moment that I realized that this guy isn't seeing what's going on. And despite my attempts to communicate to this guy, he simply wasn't having it and decided to escalate things in a direction I honestly never expected. Eventually, I tell him that he no longer has a reservation with us and I will be calling security to escort him out as he is no longer a guest at our hotel. And when he responds by saying, whatever, that's fine, I go ahead and call security, and even then, he still won't leave. Once security arrives, he starts yelling at them as well, stating that he won't leave unless we call the cops on him. Yes, you heard that right. This entitled man-child literally asked us to call the cops on him. He then looked at me and said to me, you know you're not gonna win this one, right? Even though I was not trying to compete with winning anything. anything here. So eventually the cops get here. They come up just to ask what was going on. And I honestly felt really bad for the cops because I knew this guy was just being an absolute jerk. I tell him he literally told us to call the cops on him to make him leave. So the cops go deal with him and they tell him that not only are we not reinstating his reservation, which I guess he was trying to get them to do, but he had to call an Uber home and had to abandon his car at the hotel because he was way too under the influence to drive. The cops then literally made him call the Uber in front of them, get into it, and watch him leave. So this dude clearly had some sort of power struggle thing going on or some rough stuff going on at home. I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. He thought that he could just pick on some random hotel worker and instead got the biggest walk of shame I have ever seen anyone get, especially when he had to pay for an Uber as well as a cancellation fee and God knows what else just to get his car back. And all this just to be some kind of smug jerk. Wow, that guy seriously had a few screws loose. He tried the classic play of trying to cancel his reservation as some kind of collateral for him getting what he wanted. And this is all because he had to wait, 5 minutes just to get the car valet going? People who act this way really do make me sick. Because if he was just patient for just a few minutes, the valet literally could have taken his stuff away. But instead, he decided to act like a giant man-child. And with all things considered, karma came back to bite him hard. And it seems like he got exactly what was coming to him. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for wanting to get my ex-fiance fired from her work after she tried to cheat on me multiple times? So I met my ex-girlfriend by the name of Mary, that's not her real name, in middle school a little over 7 years ago, and I was immediately in love with her when I saw her. And after knowing her for a year, we start to date and become a couple. We were both 17 at the time and were together for a little over 6 years. She was my rock with everything that happened in my life. When my mom passed away, she was the one I went to cry my heart out, and she would cheer me up. And when I was sad, she made me smile, and I did everything for her when she had it rough and needed someone. We weren't perfect, but no couple is. I could act a bit childish sometimes, and when she wanted me to do something that had to do with our future, I would try to do it, but I sometimes started way too late with it or couldn't immediately do it because of how busy my life could be. And she was no saint either. When we had a fight, the thing she always did was just ignore me instead of talking things through. And then I would have to be the one to apologize every time, even when it was her fault, or she would apologize and act like nothing happened. She also always said we both had to save some money for later, but when we saw something that we both liked, but was obviously meant for me, she would buy it even when I kept repeating that she didn't have to. Now, let's go back a month or two before posting this story. I am in university and she is working full-time, and I wanted to propose to her, but for some reason, I had a gut feeling that something was wrong with us for the last couple of months, but I had buried it all that time. One evening, I was reinstalling a messaging app on my laptop because I thought it would be easier to use it on that, but I saw Mary was still logged in from before I deleted it the first time. But right before I wanted to log out of her account, I saw that she had messaged a coworker of hers, and me being a curious idiot, thought it would be a good idea to start reading it. But when I did, my heart stopped for a little bit. My girlfriend and this person were trying to make arrangements to spend some quality time with each other before and after work. After I read that, I was so sad. I just immediately started to cry, and I thought to myself, why would she do something like that? I then began to read as much as possible in the chat and discovered they thankfully hadn't done anything yet, but that she wasn't sure anymore if she wanted to stay with me because it felt like something was wrong with us. She had the same gut feeling that I had suppressed. This guy, we'll call him Josh, which is also not his real name, said to her, well, if you're not sure, then why did you stay with him? Mary responded by saying that she did still love me and I made her happy, but it felt like I didn't think enough about our future together, which I did, but she didn't know it. They started to talk about her problems at home, but also the times that she was alone at her house, so that if he wanted to come over, she would be alone. After reading that, I was so sad, but at the same time, I still loved her so much. So that weekend, I proposed to her, and she said yes, and we were so happy. We finally were becoming a family. At least that's what I thought. Right after the weekend, she told everyone that we were engaged, including everyone at work, and they were really happy for her. But I was no idiot. I had not deleted her account from my laptop yet, so I could see if they still talked about that, and what do you know, not even 2 days after the weekend, they were talking again about doing it, and she even looked a bit more eager than before. The weekend after the engagement, she suddenly wanted to talk, but I had to bring all her stuff I had with me, so I knew what was up. But honestly, I got angry. The weekend came and I took all her stuff with me to talk, and she said she wanted to break things off because she thought I didn't take our future serious enough. But then I got angry and said some very hurtful stuff to her, and she got sad when I said the hurtful things. As I calmed down and talked to her, I said that I did care about our future, and that I've been doing and planning things behind her back just to try and surprise her with. And even though she was surprised by me taking the initiative, I also told her I knew about the messages. Now, Mary didn't like that and accused me of not trusting her, but I said to her, "Can you blame me after what I read? You were trying to cheat on me. How do you think I should have reacted?" After a bit of talking, we decided to give it another try, but I had to quit reading the messages, and she had to stop sending those kind of messages over to Josh. They were still coworkers after all, so I couldn't actually forbid her from talking with Josh. I guess I should have been firmer with her, because again, after the weekend, 3 days later, they started to message each other again, and going as far as suggesting that they could spend some quality time together at work after their hours. But at this point, I didn't have any sadness left, only anger. And at the end of the week, a friend of mine drove me to her house to confront her again, but she got angry again for reading the messages. We went back and forth again, and she ignored half the things I said as usual, but we gave it another shot and I stayed the night. But you know what? I began to see a pattern again, because yet again, after the weekend, she started to text him again, even saying that she wore something special for it if they wanted to do anything. Eventually, she got smart and changed her password, which I advised her to do if she didn't want me to read anything anymore. But honestly, I screenshotted every message they had with each other, including the one where they were talking about spending quality time at work, which if I were to send that to her work, they would both be immediately fired. She even deleted the old messages, but it was way too late for that anyways. The weekend came around and I was angry with her again, which she noticed right away and wanted to know what was going on. So I told her exactly what was happening, but this time I made it clear that I was angry. For the first time in our relationship, she was afraid of me because of the tone of my voice and my face. Mary started to cry and said she didn't want to lose me and begged me to give her yet another chance. I almost didn't give in, but then I started to think of everything we had done as well as everything we had been through together, and I gave her one last chance. After that, she got a message from Josh again, and I asked her if I could answer this time, and she said yes. The only thing I said is that I want him to leave her alone, which he answered okay and then blocked her on the app. Now fast forward to 3 days ago, Mary suddenly began getting a lot of messages again, but I thought it was one of her friends, so I just let it go. The next day, I came over for a bit before she went to work, and I took her phone to see if she had any new games on it. She always knew how to pick good games to play on her phones, but I accidentally opened up the wrong app. My fingers are pretty big, so this happens very often, even on my own phone. But I wanted to close it immediately because I also wanted her to trust me again. But the weird thing was, she had never messaged one of her friends the other day, which instantly felt like a red flag. Now on this phone, when you want to close the app, you can also see the icons of the last few that you've used. And I saw she recently used another messaging app, which I opened and saw that it was between Mary and Josh. Yes, they were messaging each other once again. He was talking about if she was sure that she didn't want to try and make arrangements again, just like they were trying to do last time. And she replied by saying, "We'll see. We still have a whole week." And after reading that, I got mad again, and I confronted her about it, but she got angry and said that she didn't want to do anything with him. And in fact, I was the one in the wrong, and that she's just playing with Josh. After that, she went to work and called me that we're over, even when I said I want to talk to her to make things work again, but she kept refusing. So I guess we're now over after 6 years, but we are trying to maybe be friends again, because we've known each other our entire lives. But I am getting angry again, because she just lied to me again and again. So here comes the part where I might be the jerk, because she hasn't told her mom yet, but they also are having a rough time with each other right now. I still have the pictures of all their messages, and I want to send them to Mary's mom to let her know why we broke up, but I also want to send the messages of her and Josh wanting to spend some quality time together at work over to their bosses just to try and get them fired. Should I do it? Because at this point, I have nothing to lose anymore. What should I do? Honestly, I don't even know what to say to this story, because I really think the original poster in this story is a complete fool. You not only allowed your girlfriend to try and cheat on you several times, but you also didn't have the common self-respect for yourself to say, hey, guess what? We're breaking up. Like, that should have been a big red flag from the beginning. Regardless of how long you've been together, she was planning on cheating on you. Like, literally had plans in the works with a coworker to go behind your back and cheat on you with another another man. That is messed up, and it blows my mind that your answer to that would be to then propose to her. Like, seriously, what were you thinking? Proposing to my girlfriend after finding out that she's trying to cheat on me is literally the last thing on my mind. I would be breaking up with her so fast it's not even funny. Like, legitimately, I think some of the blame here of all the anguish that you've gone through because of this absolutely is on your shoulders at this point. I can understand giving her one chance, but like, you've given her like, what, 4 chances already? And she's still going behind your back to try and get with this Josh guy? I mean, at that point, this is just self-inflicted problems. While I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do with those messages, I think your best course of action, though, is to start the process of moving on. Mary was not a good girlfriend, and while I think there was some kind of earnest attempt to try and get this to work in some way, I truly think it's in your best interest to move on and figure out what you want to do with your life. Because Mary very clearly does not want to be a part of it. And at this point, I don't think any kind of conversation is ever going to get Mary to come back into your life and stay in your life. An entitled HOA tries to punish me and my family for putting cameras up on our home, telling us to stop them if we can, pushing us into a legal dispute that cost them thousands of dollars in the process. Here's what happened. So this happened several years ago and is a multi-year long story. So to start things out, we installed cameras in front of our home that were looking at our vehicles. And part of the camera angles did overlook parts of 2 neighbors' properties, one's backyard and one's side yard. The cameras were battery operated and had a function where you could gray out areas that you didn't want to film. When motion occurred in the grayed out areas, the cameras would not be activated to film. The neighbors' entire properties and several bushes on our property were grayed out, and we did this when installing them. One of the neighbors was a friend and had no issues with this whatsoever. We even showed her the camera angle, and she said she didn't care whether it was grayed out or not. But even with that in mind, we still left it grayed out. The other neighbor's name was Karen. Not really, but we all know why I chose that name. This entitled Karen was on the HOA board, and as you can imagine, we did not get along with this Karen or the HOA board in the slightest. We told the Karen about the camera and showed her the grayed out area at the same time that we told our friendly neighbor about it. It was simply an FYI conversation, and we were not asking for permission in the slightest. This entitled Karen told us to take the cameras down immediately, or else we would regret it. About a week after we hung up the cameras, we got a notice from our HOA that we were violating the bylaws. Now, what were the bylaws in question? It had to do with being a nuisance to your neighbor. There wasn't a specific bylaw preventing placement of cameras, so this is literally all they could find to try and punish us. We responded with a letter detailing how we were not violating any bylaws or laws in general, and we asked them to cease and desist. But I think we know where this is going to go, because they did not cease and they did not desist. And what was their first response? They said to me that the HOA has the right to enforce these bylaws. Just try and stop us if you think you can. And these types of responses were, unfortunately, quite common from this board. We eventually entered this battle with one goal in mind: to cost them as much money and time as possible. The HOA hired a lawyer specifically just to fight us. To my knowledge, this has not happened to any other resident. In the following 4 months, we ended up costing the HOA over $4,000 in lawyers' fees fighting this battle. For reference, the entire HOA income was maybe $25,000 a year. When it came time for our official HOA hearing over the matter, we had successfully postponed it, thanks to our attorney friend, 3 separate times. There were over 100 back and forth emails with the HOA attorney, as well as ourselves. Each one of those emails was a 15-minute expense for the HOA, so I was more than happy to follow up a follow-up question with another follow-up question if it meant the HOA attorney was going to keep billing them for their time. We didn't actually want to take this battle to court, so we ended up removing the cameras the day of the hearing, just to prevent being fined, even if the fine wouldn't hold up in court. The HOA decided in the hearing that we were guilty of violating the bylaw, but they couldn't fine us, as the bylaws don't allow a fine until a hearing has been held, and the cameras were already removed. In the end, the punishment was a sternly written piece of paper on the attorney's letterhead, delivered via certified mail, that stated that we were not allowed to place a camera on our home that had the potential to invade a neighbor's privacy. Keep in mind, though, that the letter specifically stated that the camera could not be placed on our home, so we left the camera off of our home for about 4 months, all the way up until the annual HOA meeting. And you should have seen the look on the HOA board's face when I asked them to explain the $4,000 line item for attorney's fee that simply stated title searches attorney fees. The board actually tried to hide the fact that they had spent $4,000 $4,000 trying to fight us over a couple of cameras by putting the fees in as a title search. Needless to say, the meeting did not go well for them. About half of them lost their positions on the board, while the other half did remain on the board. About a week after the annual meeting, we installed new cameras, facing the same direction as the prior ones, only this time, we installed a post in the ground and mounted the cameras on the post. The admonishment we received after the hearing specifically stated that we were not allowed to install cameras on our home, and said nothing about putting them on a post. They did send a letter to try and tell us to remove the cameras, but a sternly worded response, indicating that we were prepared to fight them on this, actually ended up working this time. I guess they didn't want to spend another $4,000 trying to fight us on this. And you know what? We didn't receive any follow-up responses after that. And even after 2 years and running strong, every single camera is still installed on their post, and we don't have any plans of taking them down anytime soon. I gotta be honest, as someone who deals with HOAs on occasion, it is fantastic to see someone else put these people in their place. I seriously can't stand HOAs in the slightest. I think they are a massive waste of time, and they are just a vampire for everybody else's money. So good for the original poster for literally wasting so much time for these people. And honestly, what a hilarious workaround. Putting that on a post that's not specifically on your house is such a funny workaround that I'm sure they were not expecting. But if anything, that'll hopefully teach them a lesson that they can't just try to bully somebody away and act like they can get away with anything, because eventually you're gonna run into someone who's willing to fight back, and the end result is gonna be the same. You're gonna be horribly embarrassed, and half your board is gonna lose their positions. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled guest freaks out on me, forcing me to run into the back office just to hide from her and call the police for some kind of safety, and I've never been more scared in my life. Here's what happened. So at 1:05 a.m., I was minding my own business, sitting at the front desk like I always do. A blonde 40-something woman comes down, tugging a coat over her arms. I greet her with a smile and I say good morning. The woman looks at me and rolls her eyes, asking me what time it was. I tell her the time and she just grumbles, "I got here at 8 p.m. and I'm waking up at 1 in the morning. Ask me again if I'm having a good morning." So it was pretty obvious we had a tired, grumpy guest. Well, it is early and I am on a night schedule, so it's no biggie. It doesn't bother me. I just laugh it off and mention how tired she must be, hoping to just smooth over her attitude with some positivity. But we only went downhill. She mentioned something about the hotel making a lot of money off of being greedy. I was a little shocked by this, since that wasn't the usual dialogue my NPC brain had to use. So I started to say, "We usually have a slow season when it comes to wintertime." She then interjects and says, "Are you the owner?" I blinked a few times and said, "No, I'm just the night audit." She then responded by saying, "Then don't say we. You are not we. You don't own the building." She banged on the fireplace a few times before tightening her coat around her. I thought for a few seconds about how odd this interaction was. If anything, this was just a weird encounter. But since she came from the elevator, she had to be a guest. The side doors were locked, and she mentioned paying for the room. So this had to be someone staying here intentionally. She was already being extremely hostile, and since I work alone, I needed some information off of her. I asked her what her room number is, hovering my fingers over the keyboard. If anything, this sounded like a complaint in the making, and after one of my previous experiences, I wanted to give my boss a heads up about a future issue so he could address it as soon as possible. I mean, he did tell us that our location gets fined $150 per complaint, so I wanted to help mitigate the issue. But the woman told me she didn't know her room number, so I raised my brow and I said, "Can I get your last name then?" This lady interrupted me mid-sentence and said, "I don't want to give you that." She looked me in the eyes when she said that, and right about then, I knew this was about to be trouble. I responded to her by saying, "Then you need to leave." I basically gave her the option to either return to her room or go outside. I really did not know how to continue. I was sure that she was a guest, so I wouldn't have said anything if she had just gone back to the elevator. But in the lobby, fighting me was one place she wouldn't be. If she went outside, I'd ask for her name again to verify her identity. But I will say that I was getting worried about the confrontation. At this point, she pulled a key out of her pocket. She said to me, "You don't tell me what to do. I have a room here," which confirmed my previous expectations. Except now it escalated, and she was fast approaching me. There is no security guard, and I was starting to feel afraid. I told her if she did not leave the lobby, I would have the police come and remove her. She said to me, "I will do whatever I want. Call the police. See if I care." At this point, my hands were shaking. She was right up in my face. I did not feel like I could further further de-escalate the situation, and she was obviously not acting right. I have never, not in my life, had a confrontation like this. I grab my phone and my keys, and I head into my safe zone, which is the laundry room, just to try and remove myself from the situation and calm us both down. Yes, I was still going to call the non-emergency phone number because I needed some assistance in figuring out what to do with her. Because honestly, we don't have any training on this kind of situation. I mostly just hoped that she would scamper off to her room, but she stayed out in the lobby, ringing the service bell, trying to get me to come back and face her. I whispered into my phone so I wouldn't anger that woman any further, watching her from the lobby cameras. The woman left the bell and began to rummage through our Uber cards, yelling about how much of a jerk I was. I watched as she eventually exclaimed that she doesn't have to wait here for this, and she began to walk back to the elevators, all the way up until she stopped and rushed to the office door to try and get to me. She actually pulled on the lock, trying to break in, and this is when I started to freak out to the dispatch. I begged dispatch for help and to send someone right away. Tears started flooding down my face. I have never had someone do this before. I was so scared because she may try to hop the counter, which is really low in one area, and the laundry door does not lock. Dispatch told me an officer was in the area and to stay where I was. The woman abandoned the door and went to the low area of the front desk. I held my breath. The laundry room door was ajar, and I was hiding in a corner, and she could still see into the room, just not where I was. She said, "I'll stuff you in a washing machine," and I just repeated it to the lady on the phone. Thankfully, the crazy woman decided against hopping the counter, and I watched as she went to our north-facing doors. She put on her hood, held the door open for a cigarette, and eventually dispatch hung up on me. I didn't realize that she did, and I just kept talking on the phone. I've never had them hang up on me before, but oh well. At that time, I could tell that this lady was talking to somebody, since her arms were flailing all over the place. I call my partner at the time for comfort, and then the police come and find me. I tell him the story above, reminding him I also have a camera to back me up on this. He asks me what I want to do, and I tell him that she has got to go. The officer advises me against it, which I thought was odd, but I told him that I am the only one on site, and she was no longer welcome at our hotel. He says okay, and she is brought through the front door. Anyways, I'm given her name and her room number, and she and her husband are the second highest shiny you can be for my brand. So I am absolutely shocked by her behavior. It's under her husband's name, whom the officer says is in the room with her. Now, apparently he was a swell guy, and he was sleeping peacefully until the cops came knocking on his door. He didn't seem surprised that his wife got them kicked out of a hotel at 2 in the morning, but I again told the police officer that I have cameras to back me up. I wasn't making up any of this. The cops tell me to go back to the laundry room while the couple wheels their luggage through the lobby and into their vehicle. They were even nice enough to wait while this crazy lady de-iced the windshield, only to then flip the bird to one of the officers as they were leaving. I tried to get a hold of my boss to see if I did everything right, but he has told me in the past that he turns his phone off at night, so I had no luck in getting in contact with him. I'm scared to think about what that woman would have done to me if the door wasn't locked, or if she jumped the counter in some way. I mean, she was really twisting that handle. Do I think that she would have put me in the washing machine? No, but I've never been in any kind of fight before, so I don't really know how to defend myself. I left the lobby to de-escalate the situation, but she wanted more, and I honestly hope that my boss does not refund her. And I also think that this may be the beginning of the end of my job as a night audit, at least at this location. I really need to work somewhere with a security guard and a functioning front door that locks. And while I know there's crazy people everywhere, a little bit of peace of mind at a new job really would go a long way. Honestly, if I was in that situation, just like the original poster, I would have probably called the police as well. This lady went from like 0 to 100 all of a sudden, and she came down into that lobby with a chip on her shoulder very clearly. So yeah, you did the right thing in my opinion. And I would have kicked this lady out as well. She literally said she wanted to stuff you in a washing machine. Like, what is going on right now? Talking to me or anybody else like that is not gonna fly on my watch. You gotta go. So hopefully you have some good luck when it comes to finding a new job, because based on what you just described, that sounds like a very scary situation to be stuck in, and hopefully you find something that's much better suited for what you want to do. My sister has invited a stranger to a family event without consulting me in the first place, and now I really don't know what to do. So last year, my family got into tapping, as well as maple syrup production, from the small sugar bush on the land I co-own with my sister, as well as our 2 younger siblings. My dad did most of it last year, with some help from the rest of my siblings. I was not able able to take time off from work to help out, but this year I am in a different role at work, and I was really looking forward to participating. Over the last few months, my sister has also really gotten into online dating. She has met some people that she's decided to remain friends with. One of the men expressed interest in learning how to tap, so she invited him to participate. She asked her dad, who said it was okay, but she didn't ask me or our other siblings at all. I didn't even find out from her until a few days before that she invited this person, even though we've been talking about tapping and preparing for weeks now. We are also indigenous, and there are some ceremonial aspects and speeches that I have been working to learn, which again, she's known about for a couple of weeks now. And this is also we can collect our sap in reciprocity with the land. Now, my dad is not indigenous, but he is family, and he has been living in our community and on this land in particular for several years. So I am comfortable with him being present for part of this, but I am absolutely not comfortable with a non-indigenous stranger being there for that. On top of this, there are a couple of factors that are involved. For starters, when she got into online dating, my sister stopped hanging out with me altogether. Before that, we used to spend a couple of days a month together on hikes or thrifting. It hurt me a little, but I try to keep in mind that we are both busy, and she is excited by this new aspect that she's exploring, so it makes sense that she would focus a lot of her time and energy on that. That being said, I was really looking forward to spending this tapping time on the land with our family, all trying to reconnect once again. But now we will have to deal with some stranger being there. My sister has also had a strained relationship with our dad for a while. He can be a lot to handle because he talks a lot and is very into conspiracy theories and prepping, which spikes my sister's anxiety altogether. But he has a good heart and cares about us. Over the last few months, she's yelled at him a few times and spoken disrespectfully about him, as well as his tapping knowledge in front of the other members of our community. He doesn't know about the latter, but the former has hurt his feelings. I just feel like it's awful that she was talking down about my dad a few weeks ago in front of other community members who do their own tapping, but now that her friend wants to learn, she is happy to try and take advantage of his knowledge. What should I do? I don't know, it kind of seems like your sister has every right to be there with whoever she wants, and it seems like this only bothers you and literally nobody else in the situation, unless there's something that I'm missing. And sure, she didn't talk to you or anybody else about bringing this stranger over to learn about tapping, but she is a co-owner of the land. I mean, does she have to run everything by you before she does it? It sounds like a lot of the work has already been done without you because you haven't really been involved. But now that your sister's coming into the scene, basically right at the same time as you, is in itself clearly rubbing you the wrong way, and you feel like this guy should not be involved. But honestly, she has every right to invite this guy, in my opinion. So if you really did want to have some kind of conversation with your sister and explain to her that, hey, I want this to be a private moment with family, and then maybe he can come in and help out with tapping, you can certainly do that. But from my perspective, it honestly kind of comes off like you're being really controlling in this situation, and I seriously don't think that's fair for your sister or anybody else involved in this situation in the slightest. I don't seem to be a priority in my boyfriend's life, despite him saying that he cares about me a lot, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So I first want to say that I am really sad. I'm constantly crying because of this guy, because my self-worth has really come into question for me. I met this guy and we became fast friends. Friendship evolved into romance, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend. The first couple of days was absolute heaven. He was the perfect gentleman, and he made me feel all tingly inside. Those feelings didn't last long though. After a while, he just began to straight up ignore me. He didn't talk to me at all, and the few times I tried to initiate conversation with him, he didn't respond for hours on end. I didn't really message him left and right. All I did was text him saying hi or wishing him a good morning. Some people were saying I was being too clingy with him, and honestly, I think they might be right. I think I got much too attached to him way too quickly. The few times he did respond to my messages, he always made up ridiculous excuses as to why he wasn't able to talk to me. His usual excuse was that he was hanging out with friends and was too tired to do anything afterwards. Now, if that was an every once in a while thing, that would be one thing, but that's something that happens nearly every time. I don't feel like I'm even a priority in his life, despite allegedly being his girlfriend. One day, I worked up the nerve to tell him how I felt, and again, he rained down a series of excuses. He said to me, "It's your hormones that are making you like that," as well as several other hurtful things that he said. I told him that I didn't feel like he really wanted to be with me, and he then said to me, "That's not true and you know it. I care about you. You know that, right?" Honestly, right now I just don't know. He barely talks to me as it is, and essentially acts like I don't exist like 95% of the time. I'm so close close to breaking up with him, but I'm so hesitant. Why am I so hesitant about this? What should I do? It sounds like this is the early stages of your relationship, so I think there are a few ways you could take this. You could either try to make it work and figure this out some way, or you really could just break up. It seems like those are basically the options you have. And when it comes to trying to make it work, I think it just means you gotta sit down and talk with each other and maybe get to know each other a little bit better. And honestly, the fact that your boyfriend would say that your hormones are making you act this way is a giant red flag in my opinion. Like, I really don't know why he would say that to you, and that honestly comes off as really rude and incredibly disrespectful. And I don't think you're being too clingy or anything like that, but maybe he doesn't understand what you want out of this relationship. Maybe you really do need that text communication between the two of you, essentially so you can know that you're both still in contact and that he still likes you. Maybe that's just something that you need. So maybe communicating with him and explaining what you want out of this relationship really would make a big difference. So hopefully things work out for you, and honestly, even if it doesn't, I wouldn't be too surprised, because it definitely seems like this guy's just a little bit off when it comes to the relationship. And if that really is the case, then I seriously think you deserve much better than this. My entitled manager is refusing to pay me the full amount that I deserve, dancing around the law and claiming any kind of loophole they can find just to keep from paying me my full wage. And now, as a result of my complaining, they're trying to fire me as some kind of retaliation, and I now see myself in a legal battle that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. So to start things off, I've been in the restaurant game for about 8 years now. My current restaurant is definitely on the shadier side when it comes to employment practices, from threatening to pull shifts if we don't get good Google reviews, to an extremely hostile and incompetent expo who will scream, curse at you, and slam things for nothing at all. They've also been getting fast and loose with the tip jar. I first raised the issue when they implemented a new chart for cleaning side work, in addition to normal side work, that clearly runs afoul of 80-20. The chart says to pick 3 things per shift to complete, and the tasks included cleaning every booth in the restaurant, moving every table and vacuuming, cleaning every outside table, etc. They also started this when we were understaffed on bussers, so I think it was an extra effort to save money on labor from having to hire new ones. Servers were also told to pick up the slack in cleaning the bathrooms. Again, wasn't making a huge deal about it, but hey, this could be a liability if someone makes a ruckus about it. My manager had never heard of 80-20 or any other limitations on what work servers can and cannot do for the tip credit. I showed my GM the law, and he said to email it to him and he'll send it to corporate. A few weeks go by and nothing happens. So I think to myself, okay, whatever, that's on me, I guess. To be fair, I really wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. However, the pot got a bit stirred when I got trained on the bar and did work a full week of training shifts where I couldn't earn any tips, and I saw that they claimed the tip credit for the entire week. Additionally, they scheduled me for an 8 a.m. cleaning shift on my day off, even though we open at 11 o'clock. I'd asked the managers on 3 separate occasions if I would at least get minimum wage for the 8 a.m. cleaning shift. They kept saying yes, but lo and behold, they never changed it, and my pay stub reflected the tip credit applied for all the hours worked. At this point, I drafted up a written request for the unpaid wages, detailing every opening shift I've worked, as well as the training week, the deep cleaning shift, and a couple of notable nights that I had to hang out and do side work despite not having tables for hours. I ultimately did cool off a little bit, and I didn't turn it in. Fast forward a few more weeks to yesterday, and they said corporate finally answered the legal email and said no, as long as we get minimum wages for the week, that's all that's required, which is just flat out a lie. So now I'm angry that they're playing games, so I just say forget it. So I update the request for wages for all opening shifts that I've had, and I decide to go ahead and turn it in. Today, the very next day, as soon as I come in, they pull me into the office. They say they're writing me up for this list I made. I made a very detailed closing list on how to close for a new guy whose first night it was closing. I'd actually gone super detailed on how to time things and properly clean things. For example, nobody ever cleans the tea nozzles, and they get grimy and disgusting and have flies every morning. I mean, I literally made a schematic of the nozzle as well as how to take it apart. I'd also made some jokes, which, for example, there's one girl I'm friends with, but tease her because she's notorious for skipping out on side work. Again, we're friends. I tease her and she laughs and takes it in all good faith. We literally got juice together today on break. I had shown the manager the list when I made it over a week ago, and she kept saying that she loved it. She needs to type that up. I better save it for her, and it's so true. Today, the same manager says she's writing me up because the jokes in the list are unacceptable, but I say said that is BS. I wasn't born yesterday, and I was hoping the wage thing could be resolved easily. All I ever wanted was to be acknowledged. But now they're obviously going the retaliation route, and things are going to get messy. They just swore, no, this is unacceptable. This is unprofessional behavior. I asked the girl if she really felt that way about it, and she had not even heard anything about it. She literally said no, but she did find the jokes hilarious. And as I was typing this at the bar after work, a guy that the manager is trying to spend some quality time with was also here as well. I've always been cool with him. I gave him a brief summary of what happened, and he said he's not supposed to tell me this, but yeah, they're trying to get rid of me. My manager already asked him if he knows any bartenders because I'm on the way out. I submitted a complaint to the Department of Labor, but on Monday, I plan to call and update the complaint as soon as possible, with the obvious retaliation efforts in note. If they don't pay the wages within 15 days, I plan to pursue arbitration for the wages, as well as liquidated damages and any damages that result from retaliation. So I really hope it all goes well. Wow, this situation is honestly crazy. The fact that these people would act this way and basically try to throw you under the bus, all because you want to get paid fairly, is completely unacceptable. There is no good reason for that in the slightest. Like, think about it. You just want to get paid what you're worth. You want them to pay you for your time and your efforts. This is not a charity. You're not doing this for free. That is not how this works in the slightest. And the fact that they would try and take advantage of that and not pay you the full amount that you deserve is really toxic and seriously not okay. I don't care what these people are like. I don't care if they're rude or mean or nasty. When you start messing with someone else's money like that, you can expect some kind of legal battle. And it really sounds like the original poster is about to do that. So hopefully you not only lawyer up with this situation, but also that it turns out to be in your benefit, because these people sound awful. And I seriously think that these people need a wake-up call. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My manager fires me after I refused to work since I was not even on the schedule that week. And without my participation in this business, the entire place inevitably shuts down only 8 months later, and I've never been more satisfied in my life. Here's what happened. Many years ago, I worked at a place with lots of arcade games and pizza, similar to a Chuck E. Cheese. I was hired to do maintenance, repair, and setup for these arcade machines. There was already someone there doing this, but they were never allowed to work more than 40 hours a week, and the place was open 7 days a week, 9 hours a day. So that's a total of 63 hours a week, not including prep for opening and cleanup after closing. At the end of my first shift, I was told that I was also expected to help with the cleanup since everyone that worked close had to help with the cleanup as well, and all of my shifts were closing shifts. This meant that I had less time before my morning classes than I expected, especially when I started taking the job, but a few extra bucks was valuable to a starving college student. Fast forward about 2 months, and the new manager, who's fresh out of high school, gets his big boy boots on and starts making rules. The first rule is that a schedule with everyone's hours for the next week will be posted by Friday morning, and the second rule is that you must clock in before your posted shift start time, but not more than 5 minutes before your shift. And the third rule was that you must clock out at the end of your posted shift end time, no more than 5 minutes after. At the end of my first shift, after these rules were created, I clocked out and left everyone else to do the cleanup. To be clear, it's not like I was getting time and a half overtime or anything like that. All I expected was to be paid my normal rate, and they didn't even want to pay me that, so I clocked out and just left. At the beginning of my next shift, they were very angry with me. They expected me to clock out and then work over an hour for free every single shift. These were only 5-hour shifts too, mind you. But you know what? I refused. The next week, they posted a new schedule with my shift ending an hour later. Since everyone saw the list, they all got mad. I guess they were all just fine with wage theft until one person refused. The next week, everyone had an extra hour on their shifts, and at this point, his wage theft scheme had fallen apart. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and this new manager doesn't come in on Thursday. In fact, he doesn't come in until Monday. No schedule is posted, and once Monday afternoon rolls around, I go in to get my check and say to them, "See you next week." I'm told my shift started half an hour ago, and I say that I made plans since I wasn't on the schedule, and no schedule means I couldn't be on it. The manager then pointed to the schedule posted on the wall, printed just hours before, and this was after some of the shifts had already been started. I thanked him for posting next week's schedules early, and then I started to leave. Then I was threatened with termination, and I just kept walking. I came back a week later and talked with a daytime guy doing the same job. He said it was a bad week. Many machines were down, and he was refusing around like $100 in tokens because he was giving much of his time giving refunds, to the point where he didn't have enough uninterrupted time to make any repairs. He was also keeping a roll of masking tape with him just so he could tape over the coin slots as the machines failed. So this meant a lot more use on the remaining machines, which really started to show pretty quickly. I go to clock in and I was told that I had been fired, so I just smiled and I happily walked out. I spoke with a daytime guy a little while later, and apparently they never filled my position, mostly because people with mechanical and electrical knowledge willing to work minimum wage are kind of rare. Instead, he was getting 14 hours a week in time and a half overtime, with a base pay almost twice what I was getting. This extra expense came out of the department budget, which also paid for replacement parts, despite the fact that even before this, it was never enough to buy enough parts. And this from the department budget thing was from the same manager. He simply did not want normal payroll to go up. For a while, basically everyone was carrying around $20 in tokens just to give refunds, but the compensations were unacceptable to the manager, so now only the sales desk could issue refunds, which then meant ordering pizzas took forever, and many people just left angry rather than waiting for a refund. Most machines had tape over the token slots. Now, the backup at the sales desk didn't last long, as few people were coming and no one was booking parties anymore. Other than staff, it was basically empty. It didn't even smell like pizza anymore. With no customers, the daytime guy finally had time to make repairs, but didn't have parts to do most of the repairs. As far as I know, that manager stayed there until the place went under, which is about 8 months after I was fired for not working a shift that his own rules said I could not work. And honestly, I've never been more satisfied in my life. What a crazy circumstance. I mean, seriously, the original poster was basically holding that business together. Like, the fact that they were there doing their job meant that the rest of this place was able to keep the lights on. Not to mention this stupid manager. They literally fired the one person who could keep things going instead of just being reasonable and saying, okay, come in next week. I mean, if you want to start these dumb rules and try and have this weird enforcement for no reason, then you should expect somebody eventually to come back at you and show just a little bit of malicious compliance. And I also don't blame the original poster for putting their foot down and saying, no, I'm not going to have you steal my wage. I'm not going to clock out early just to then work another hour later. Like, that's just not going to happen. Sorry. Either pay me what I'm worth, or guess what? I'll find another job. So I really do think it's good for the original poster that they stood up for themselves and they decided to comply maliciously. Because you know what? This manager had it coming. And hopefully this reality check lasts this guy for the rest of his life. A creepy woman is trying to track down one of our guests at the hotel I work at, and the way she was acting and freaking out on us truly was incredibly creepy. Here's what happened. So for reference, this happened back in summer of 2022. I work the 3 to 11 shift at the hotel, so I deal with most, if not all, of the check-ins. This particular guest checked in at around 6 or 7 o'clock. For privacy reasons, I'll just call him Jack. That's not his real name. At check-in, everything went smoothly. Jack seemed like a nice, quiet man. Before he went down to his room, he said something that my coworker and I should have taken as a forewarning for the rest of the night. He asked us to not transfer any calls to his room. Later, a woman comes in asking if Jack is there. My coworker tells her that as per policy, we cannot tell her that information. She then thanks him and just leaves. Shortly after that, a phone call comes in, and this time from a slightly different sounding woman who claimed to be from Domino's Pizza, asking for a room number for Jack so she could bring up his pizza. She sounded different enough, and we were really busy as it is, that we didn't really think much of it, and so we just gave the number to her and went about checking other guests in. About 5 minutes later, we receive a call from Jack asking to be moved since we gave out his location. We realized then what just happened, we apologized, and we promptly moved him again. 15 minutes pass by, and we receive another call, this time from the woman. She asked to be transferred to Jack's room, and in the interest of rectifying the mistake that we had made, I tell her that no one under that name is staying here. She tells me that that's just absolute BS, as we had apparently transferred her there. This is when we figured out that the Domino's woman and this woman were in fact the same person. So I guess she's correct, obviously, but I'm not going to tell her that. Instead, I say, I'm sorry, but I don't know what to tell you, ma'am. She then demands to speak to a manager. And the thing is, my managers are only there from 8 until 4 o'clock during the week. So there isn't even a current manager there for her to talk to. I tell her this and she gets angry. She started to cuss me out and threatened to call corporate on me. In response, I say to her, ma'am, if you want to, you can go right ahead and do that. Have a great night. And then I promptly hung up the phone on her. I would have thought that this would have been the end of it, but I was sorely mistaken. Not even 5 minutes later, I pick up the phone phone and she's there again, yelling at me and swearing at me and generally just being awful. And when she did that, I immediately hung up again. My coworker calls me to the back office and shows me the cameras. On them, we can clearly see the woman and an unknown man trying the exterior doors around the wing where Jack's room was. We have a can of pepper spray behind the desk, so we grab it and walk down to the halls. But by the time we got there, they were already gone. When we get back to the desk, we notice a silver SUV with a woman and the man in it lurking around in the front of the building. They did this for about an hour and finally left just as we were about to call the cops. And that was the last we ever saw of her that night, and I was honestly very creeped out by the entire experience. First and foremost, I want to say that the hotel is 100% at fault. They gave out this guy's location after he expressly said, "Hey, I don't want to have my information given out. I want to be privately in this hotel without anybody knowing that I'm here." But the people at the front literally violated that almost immediately. I mean, how inappropriate is that? This guy's trying to sleep in this hotel. He is clearly trying to lay low from the psychopath that is stalking him. And what does the front desk go ahead and do? Oh, they just give out his number to the random pizza person who is clearly just this lady trying to find him. Like, how awful at your job do you have to be to let that happen? Not even 15 minutes after this guy checked in. Completely inappropriate and so unacceptable in my opinion. If I was the guy that had this happen to them, I would have stormed right down to the front desk and demanded a refund because I wouldn't want to stay at a hotel that's going to compromise my safety. Because look at the cameras, look at all that was going on. These people clearly had ulterior motives, and you probably put this guy in a lot of danger. So hopefully if you still do work in the hotel business, maybe be just a little bit more mindful of what people want out of their experience, because you straight up jeopardized this guy's privacy, and that in my opinion is completely unacceptable. My entitled sister-in-law says some awful things about me behind my back, creating horrible rumors and awful hearsay, all after I gave her and her husband the opportunity to live in my apartment while they tried to find someplace new. But after a while, I simply had had enough, and I requested that they leave sooner than later. Here's what happened. So I'm a 29-year-old female, and I have two sons, one age 9 and one age 10, whose dad passed away 4 years ago. I have my own 2-bedroom place that I rent that I've lived in for about 5 years now. And while it is only a 2-bedroom unit, it is still pretty big. 2 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom with a shower, toilet, and bathtub, and a living area room that is closed off and has its own door. Then a kitchen and dining area, and then also another bathroom downstairs attached to the laundry room, which only has a toilet and a sink. And all of this information is just context because it's relevant to help understand the rest of the story. So the year my son's father passed away, about 4 years ago in September, is when he passed, and the funeral was early October. So the next month in early November, my brother and sister-in-law found themselves homeless. They had only one child at the time, which is my sister-in-law's child from a previous relationship. He's about a year old, and my brother had stepped up because his own dad wasn't in the picture. So I offer them my son's room for a few weeks until they can get on their feet and get on their way, which I didn't mind, and also my sons were okay with it. They had to pay me rent and board of $300 for a fortnight. We all thought it was reasonable, as my sister-in-law gets paid nearly $2,000 a fortnight in government benefits. So as time goes on, I realized that my sister-in-law is a very, very lazy person and mother. I do not like mother shaming one bit, but this was different. She was leaving dirty, used diapers everywhere. In the bathroom, in the living room, anywhere she changed the child basically. No matter how many times I asked her to please remember to put the diapers in the bin straight away please, it would continuously happen. I also help with her child like babysitting and feeding as well, because every evening at dinner time, she would complain of being too tired or sick to leave the room, so I would feed him for her. I felt like she was taking advantage of my kindness because it got to the point where I was doing everything for her infant child that she should have been doing herself. She also smokes the herb, if you know what I mean, every single day, and it's like she just wanted to lay around in the room. I spoke to my brother numerous times about how I felt, and he would speak to her, but she would never change. He worked Monday through Friday, and I swear that she hated that. She would complain to him that she doesn't want him to work because she missed him in the day, and that she gets enough benefits that he doesn't need to work. So one day I found out from another family member that my sister-in-law was running me down behind my back, complaining that I'm nasty to her when my brother is at work during the day. Now, I have a condition, and I'm on disability because of it, so I don't work, but I also study online, and I'm on site on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Also, not to mention that I take care of her child for her on days when I am home. I was never nasty to her because that's just not the kind of person that I am. Also, me and my sons were also still grieving. I eventually got fed up and said that they had to find other arrangements by next week. My brother was fine with that, but guess what? She wasn't. It was coming up to Christmas and she said she can't leave because Christmas is in a few weeks and her kid deserves a proper Christmas. I explained that my sons and I needed our space back and that I was emotionally and physically drained from the grief and also the stress of having to look after her baby for her. And I was cleaning up for her as well all the time, all while she just sits around and does nothing. And she was trying to use this time to look for and apply for other rentals. She didn't like that and suggested that I turn my lounge room into a third bedroom. That way, so my sons could get their own room back. And she was using that against me because they were bunking in my bedroom with me at the time. I said I couldn't believe she had the audacity to even suggest that, especially after all the awful things she said to me behind my back to other family members. We then eventually got into a massive argument after that. She then said that she was pregnant and called me evil for telling her she had to find somewhere else to stay. But you know what? I really did not believe her, to be completely honest with you. They ended up leaving a few days later. My brother didn't want me and my boys to have to feel like garbage just because of the lies that my sister-in-law was making up. He didn't leave my sister-in-law because he felt obligated to be there, mostly because of her claiming to be pregnant. Plus, he was attached to her little boy and saw him as his own. Thankfully, he did not believe her lies about me because he knows that I'm not like that. Plus, he said that he loved her, so I respected that. But I told him that I honestly think that she's a narcissist. Yeah, this lady sounds absolutely obnoxious, and I would also label her as a narcissist. She treated your home like some kind of lounge, and she didn't do anything. She spent her entire time being there just sitting around, not looking for another place to live, and basically taking advantage of your kindness. Because honestly, in her eyes, why should she leave? You get to take care of her kids? She's got basically a free place to stay? This is all good in her eyes, which honestly is unacceptable, and it's so irresponsible it's not even funny. And I'm honestly blown away that this guy would even stick around with this lady. She's clearly taking advantage of him, and she's probably lying about being pregnant. I really would not put it past her. So regardless of what happens, I'm just glad that this lady doesn't live with you anymore. She does not sound like a good person, and she was clearly taking advantage of your kindness. And hopefully moving forward in the future, you don't have to deal with her entitled behavior anymore. An entitled Karen tries to get me fired, all because she hit me with her electric scooter at Walmart, falsely claiming that I was the reason she crashed. Things escalated so much that she even showed up to our store with a lawyer next to her. Here's what happened. So when I was in college, I used to work at Walmart, initially as a courtesy clerk. The town I lived in easily exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer months. By state law, the store had to give us a 5-minute break inside just to cool down after 2 rounds of collecting carts and provide us with beverages so that we can stay hydrated. The beverage they usually gave us was Gatorade, and this will be relevant to the story. After a couple of hours, it was time for me to take my first official 15-minute break. I filled a cup of Gatorade and proceeded to make my way to the break room. There was a bit of a blind spot walking past the registers, so I stopped and looked both ways down the aisle to make sure I wouldn't accidentally bump into anyone. The closest person to me was one of our regular shoppers, an older lady who is the entitled Karen of this story. This entitled Karen has amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, the same condition that Stephen Hawking had. Because of this, she had to use an electric wheelchair and lived at a local assisted living center. Due to her condition, there were 2 rules she had to follow whenever she shopped at the store in order to prevent accidental collisions with people. For starters, she must always be accompanied by an employee from the assisted living center whenever she shopped there. And also, she had to keep the wheelchair speed to one of the lowest settings. Knowing these rules and seeing how far down the aisle she was, I knew I could get across quick enough before she got anywhere near me. After taking a step or 2 down into the aisle, I immediately noticed 2 things. For starters, she did not have anyone with her from the assisted living center, and also she was driving the wheelchair much faster than she was supposed to. She was on a collision course with me, so instinctively I tried to jump back out of the way to avoid getting hit, but unfortunately it was way too late. She hits me while I was in the air. I fell to the ground and I spilled my Gatorade all over the wheelchair. The lady loses control of the chair and starts spinning around in circles. She's flailing her arms and screaming with what limited mobility she had, and nearly hit me a second time, but I managed to roll out of the way. I knew I had to try and stop her before she hit someone else, so I grabbed the handlebar on the back of the wheelchair, hoping I could at least slow her down. This didn't work, and instead, she dragged me around in circles in the middle of the aisle. Several coworkers and shoppers quickly rushed in and stopped the lady, who seemed to be okay, just a little bit startled. But when I tried to stand up, two male shoppers held me down. One of them leaned over me and said, "You're gonna be alright, sir. Everything's gonna be fine." He turned his head and started yelling, "I need a first aid kit." I could hear a lady in the background also scream that somebody needed to call 911. So I'm just laying there and I'm wondering what on earth happened to me. Sure, I was going to have a nice bruise on my hip from when I hit the floor, but besides that, I felt fine. I quickly discovered why the customers were panicking. The flavor of the Gatorade that we had that day was the fruit punch one. Some of it splashed on my face when the lady hit me. The customers who witnessed the incident thought I busted my head open when I hit the ground. I had to assure them that this was nothing, it was just Gatorade, and that I was fine. A member of management eventually showed up to document the entire incident. After I gave him my statement, I was finally able to take my break. I was even given an extra 5 to 10 minutes so I could clean up and recuperate from what had just happened. And this is where I thought the story would end, but honestly, I was completely wrong. A couple of weeks later, I was called back to the manager's office, the store manager, who will call Kate, that's not her real name, as well as several assistant managers, all of them sitting there waiting for me. Kate told me to take a seat and asked if I remember the incident from a few weeks ago with the handicapped lady in the electric chair and the Gatorade. I just chuckled and said, "How could I forget?" Kate said, "Well, that lady was just in my office and she had a lawyer with her. She wanted to sue the store, claiming that she suffered mental distress from that incident, and as part of her lawsuit, she wanted your employment with the company terminated, claiming that you were the one responsible for the collision." And when Kate said that to me, I was absolutely speechless. I could not believe what I was hearing. But Kate quickly put my mind at ease. She said, "Don't worry, you're not in any trouble." We showed the lady and her lawyer the security footage from the incident, and I reminded her of the rules that she knew she had to follow whenever she shopped at the store, just so we could prevent any collisions from happening. But she decided to break them anyways, and that she should consider herself lucky that she hit a store employee who only suffered a minor injury, because if she had hit another customer and that customer suffered a serious injury, she would be held responsible for the collision and would have had a major lawsuit on her hands. The assisted living center would also be at fault for somehow allowing her to leave the center on her own without their notice. But if she still wanted to sue, she can try, but she won't win. This entitled Karen's lawyer knew they didn't have a snowball chance in heck of winning this one in the slightest, so the two of them just left. Kate said that since I was the employee involved in this incident, she thought I would want to know what this entitled Karen attempted to do, stating that I would get a kick out of it. I will admit, it does add a nice punchline to the story, but I truly wish I could have been there in the manager's office to watch this encounter with the entitled Karen, as well as the rest of the store's managers. It must have been nice to watch her face drop when she realized she absolutely did not have a case and she would not be winning this fight. Wow, that entitled Karen is an absolute scumbag. I mean, how low do you have to be to not only try and throw the employee under the bus, who was trying to save you from crashing into people, by the way, but also to then demand that they get fired because of your stupid mistake? Like, they literally did nothing wrong. They didn't do anything to you. They were only trying to help you not crash into other people. And if anything, the original poster probably has some kind of grounds to try and take them to civil court. I mean, they really should be lucky that the original poster is not pursuing this legally. So good for the manager for actually being on their side and not allowing this entitled Karen to basically walk all over the original poster, because this really could have gone a lot differently. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. Today, I messed up by hiring a house cleaner to help me get my awful apartment in order. But instead of cleaning the apartment like we hired her to do, she instead takes a private video of the apartment just to have for her own personal record. And now, as a result, we are demanding a refund. Here's what happened. So my apartment is an absolute train wreck. There's a million reasons why we fall behind on housework, but my top 5 are as follows. For starters, I'm a full-time nursing student in my last semester, and I'm currently working 24 to 36 hours a week. My significant other is a full-time teacher, and we both have ADHD and depression, and no one picks up after themselves. My mom is also a chronically messy person, just like myself and my significant other, and we are trying to do better, but we are struggling. So my mom had someone come in and help her get her apartment cleaned, and then gifted us a visit from a different house cleaner to help us out. The house cleaner she already paid to to visit us is the daughter of someone my mom and I both used to work with. So I was a bit reluctant to have someone that I know be aware of the state of our apartment. But she was trying to get her cleaning service started, and my mom wanted to help her out. So I get it scheduled with this cleaner, but the night before she's supposed to come in, I had been studying for a big exam, and I was trying to crawl out of my depressive episode and just function. So I did not have the chance to actually pre-clean the apartment before she came over. I texted her that night asking to reschedule for a time when I had a better chance to pre-clean, explaining that I had an exam I desperately needed to study for, and I had not been able to pre-clean in the slightest. She adamantly assures me that it's fine, not to worry about it, to focus on my exam and let her handle the mess, and I reluctantly agreed. Wednesday, she texts me that she's running late and won't be there before I leave for school. We make arrangements for her to let herself in, and I don't hear anything else until the afternoon when I turn my phone back on after my exam. And when I do, I have a text message that just says, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to reschedule." So I respond by saying, "That's okay, is something wrong?" She says the mess is more than she was expecting and that she can come back another time after I've had a chance to pre-clean like I said. It wasn't a wasted trip anyways, because she had to deliver something to my mom. Friday, when I talk to my mom again, I tell her about the cleaning lady and how she had to reschedule because the mess was way too much. So we are going to be working on cleaning this week, all while we are on spring break. My mom texted the cleaning lady, much to my chagrin, because she was frustrated that she hadn't been notified as the customer that services were not actually rendered. And that's when the cleaning lady tells my mom that it was just way too much. And she's only telling her this mother to mother, that if her daughter was living like we are, she would want to know and she would be concerned. Then the cleaning lady offers to send my mom the video she took of my apartment to show her what she's talking about. And she's again only doing this mother to mother out of concern. My mom and I were both very upset that the video was taken, and even more so that she offered to send it to my mom. My mom told her basically that she's aware of the condition and that we need help, and that's why she hired a house cleaner to help us. My mom is asking for a refund because we both feel absolutely betrayed, and we are not comfortable with this cleaning lady coming back later. The cleaning lady basically said she will have to wait 2 weeks because she used it to pay rent, which is fine, whatever, and I totally understand that, but honestly, I don't think we'll ever bring that lady back to our apartment ever again. That is seriously the worst thing that could have possibly happened. What an absolute betrayal of trust. You bring this person in to try and clean up your apartment since you have not had the chance to do it yourself. And not only does she not do it because it's too overwhelming, but she also takes a video of your house without your knowledge. Like, that wasn't listed in the text message. Like, she didn't explain that she violated your privacy and took a video of everything that was going on in your apartment. Like, that is not okay in the slightest. And the fact that she was trying to send this over to the mom as some kind of excuse is, in my opinion, just that. It's a horrible excuse. She probably didn't even take that video to show it to the mom, but probably took it to show it to her friends and probably show it to other people and be like, wow, you know the original poster? Look how messy their house is. So personally, I don't blame you for looking for a refund and telling this cleaning lady to simply take a hike, because what she did is unbelievably disrespectful, and I seriously don't see her ever succeeding in the cleaning business if this is how she's gonna treat her clients. My coworkers are spreading a rumor that I'm spending quality time with one of my coworkers and have taken it upon themselves to tell my boyfriend this fake rumor as well. And now my relationship looks like it might be falling apart, and I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I are on terrible terms right now, and I just don't know what to do. I have never been in a situation like this, and I'm kind of freaking out. So to back up, I work in a restaurant with a bar, and I'm also in college. Our relationship is very good and healthy, and I pretty much live with him. He is very sweet, funny, intelligent, and very hot. We have been together for 2 years with no major problems. We have had small problems that were easily solvable, but that's about it. Now, there is a guy at work who's about 29 years old that has been there for about 5 months now. There is a group of friends I have at work who I hang out with sometimes after work. He is included in this group now, and usually he goes with us whenever we do something. He likes to flirt and has hit on me several times, and I shut it down when he takes it too far. When we are at friends' houses, he always wants to talk to me. He wants to sit next to me, touch me in a joking way, except when my boyfriend is there, of course. Someone gave him my number, or he may have gotten it from work somehow, and now he texts me every once in a while. Unless he asks me a specific question about something, I just ignore him. It is annoying sometimes, but it's not frequent. I have talked to my boyfriend about this, and he will get upset upset about it sometimes, but this guy never acts like this when my boyfriend is actually around. He has offered to talk to him, but I told him not to do it, that I could handle it and it would just hurt me at work. He hadn't done anything. He just didn't like him. A few nights ago at work, I had a break, so I went into the walk-in just to vape. He followed me and started talking to me while in there. He was sitting directly across from me. A guy we work with walked in and he had his hand on my leg. I didn't think much of this at the time because it wasn't that unusual. He would do something like this and I would tell him to stop. He would laugh about it and then apologize. This has now turned into a huge rumor at work that we are apparently spending quality time together. Someone told my boyfriend about this, but this whole thing's been twisted into this guy being all over me or making out. Last night when I got home, he accused me of cheating on him, as well as spending quality time with this guy, and we got into a huge fight. I told him what actually happened and have been trying to convince him that nothing is going on, but he doesn't know what to believe right now, and I can't really blame him really, when it's a rumor that he was told directly. I gave him my phone and I blocked this guy completely. I have offered to quit my job, but he hasn't told me one way or the other. But now I don't want to go back to that place at all. My boyfriend texted him and later they got into a screaming match. He told my boyfriend that he could have spent quality time with me anytime he wanted, and I guess I'm lucky he didn't lie and say that we were since they were fighting. This is my first real relationship and I love my boyfriend. I am scared of losing him over this or our relationship being permanently damaged. I don't know what else to do to convince him or how to fix this in the first place. What should I do? Personally, if I was in your situation and some guy was following me into the walk-in just to touch my leg, not to mention all the other instances where this guy has touched you inappropriately, but I would be going to HR or management and being like, hey, this is what's going on. This guy is touching me inappropriately and you need to do something about this. Because that, first and foremost, is unacceptable and that should have been addressed a long time ago. I don't care if he's part of your friend group. I don't care if you have any kind of camaraderie with him or anything along those lines. The second this guy starts touching you without your permission is the second that something needs to be done about that. And as for your supposed friends at this workplace, all of them are so toxic for spreading that rumor. Instead of going to you directly and being like, hey, what's going on? Like the fact they would perpetuate this and then go to your boyfriend just to be like, this is what's going on is unbelievable to me. They were never your friend in the first place. And this is clearly some kind of plan to try and ruin your relationship. So hopefully you're able to do something about this guy at work while also trying to maintain your relationship with your boyfriend. Because the actions that are being taken against you, as well as these false rumors that are being spread around by your coworkers, absolutely should have consequences. Today, I messed up by basically crossing a boundary with my friend that has made him very standoffish and basically ruined our friendship, and I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 31-year-old female, and about a year ago, I became friends with a guy from work. Let's call him Jake. That's not his real name. We started chatting at a company party, we got along, and hung out outside of work a few times. He was going through some stuff at the time. He recently got dumped and was about to graduate from college and was trying to figure out what to do for the rest of his life. Many of these struggles resonated with my 20-something-old self, and it felt good to be able to impact some wisdom. On the other hand, he was confident and assertive, and I felt perhaps in that sense, I could learn a little from him. I was also just happy that someone cool wanted to hang out with me. I am a pretty anxious person, and I don't have a vibrant social life. Now, Jake was cute in a way that was hard for me to ignore, but he was never a viable partner for me. The thought was there at first, but it dissipated once he started to come to me for relationship advice regarding other women. I would never pursue someone who was not interested in me. There was also the age difference, and the fact that we are in different places in our lives. While I was still a little attracted to him, I was firmly settled on not acting on it and not letting it show. I'm not normally very feminine, but I think I acted even more boyish around him just so that it was crystal clear that no flirting was happening. At one point, Jake invited me to his birthday party. I didn't want to disappoint a friend on his birthday, so I went. But I get anxious in social groups, especially if there are people I don't know, so I drank a lot to make myself at ease. After the party, Jake became more absent, saying that he had to study, which made sense. He agreed to meet up when we had more time, but he didn't follow up. And as bad as I am at reading social cues, I felt that he might not be very interested in seeing me, so I just kind of backed off. I felt a little sad about it though, because I valued him as a friend, and I didn't understand what made him change his mind about me. So about 6 months later, I messaged him, and after we caught up, I asked him directly if there was a reason he had blown me off, to which he replied that at the party, I was all over him, and I had crossed his boundaries when he told me to stop. He said that he liked me, but not in a romantic way, and that was way too much for him to deal with. I was flabbergasted, apologized profusely, and asked about details, convinced that this was something that had been erased from my memory. After a few days of mulling it over, I did recall a situation like this, but I remembered it a little bit differently. In my drunken mind, I was just showing friendly affection. I did something like rest my head on his shoulder, and when he pulled away and said he didn't want to be touched, I almost took it as a joke and purposefully touched his arm, to which he reacted very nervously, so I cut it off. This is an awful thing I do when I'm under the influence. I think it's funny to do something someone says that they dislike just to see how they react. One time, a guy was going off about how he loved his shoes and hated it when someone stepped on them, and I thought it would be funny to do exactly that. He screamed at me, I apologized instantly, while also apologizing again later on when I sobered up, and it didn't ruin our friendship, but I admit that it was stupid. It was a childish thing to do, and I don't know why on earth I did that. Honestly though, I don't think I'm gonna do that ever again after this. Anyways, I trust his account better than my memory. If I had just been friendly, I wouldn't have made him so uncomfortable, and let's face it, I do have a history of becoming scandalous when I drink. In the past, I've woken up next to people with little to no recollection of the events, and had to explain to them that this wasn't in fact the beginning of our future together. I had instead just gotten wasted. I don't do that anymore. I barely even go out anymore, but I am what I am, and what I apparently am is a professional creep that bothers young men. I do wish he had told me straight up, instead of pretending everything was okay for months, but I understand that it was well within his rights. Maybe we could have stayed friends, but maybe what I did was unforgivable. I have a friend who crossed my physical boundaries once, and it changed how I felt about him altogether, but I didn't cut him off. He apologized, and I knew he understood it was not an okay thing to do to anyone. We survived it in general, but we had known each other for years by that point. Maybe that friendship had a more solid foundation to begin with. This whole thing messed me up pretty badly. I told one friend who said that he had seen me under the influence and flirty in the past, and it wasn't something that would traumatize anyone. He said it was normal for me to feel embarrassed, but it wasn't that big of a deal. It's been a few months, and it keeps popping up in my head. I feel so ashamed, and my self-esteem is at an all-time low. I guess I'm also just a little concerned about if this gets out, although we don't really know a lot of the same people. I would maybe like to talk it through with him, but I don't think he's interested in talking, and I want to respect his wishes. I do realize that I am at fault here, and my sense of self-worth is none of his concern. I don't know how to process this by myself though. How do I recover from this? Do I even deserve to recover from this? What should I do? It really sounds like you might want to take some steps to stop drinking altogether, because what you've described is really scary. I mean, you didn't even remember this interaction in that way, and in the past you've also woken up next to people that you literally don't know. Like, that is really dangerous behavior. If Jake was a different person with ulterior motives, he easily could have taken advantage of your inebriated state, and that in and of itself could have been awful. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. You really are at fault in this situation. You crossed a serious boundary on his end, and there's really no reason for him to have to hear about your self-worth issues. So hopefully you're able to find help for that kind of situation, while also finding some kind of sobriety in your life, because what you described is really scary, and this very easily could have gone in a different direction if you were not careful. My entitled older sister refuses to take her kids back after me and my great-grandmother babysit them for several days, and even when I bring them right to her house, she threatens to call the police on me just to get me to try and keep her kids for a few more days. But I wasn't having it, and I refused to back down. Here's what happened. So basically, my sister called my mom the other day and tried to convince my mom to pick up the kids and bring them to my house for my great-grandmother to watch, without okaying it with my great-grandmother first. My mom obviously refused because she had work, and I had the car my great-grandmother and I share, since I use the car during the week for work. So on Saturday, my great-grandmother went to pick up the kids as usual so they could spend the night with us and go to church the next day. After church, Nana will keep the kids for a few more hours before taking them home. However, when she took the kids home, Candy blatantly refused to take them and made many excuses as to why she couldn't and wouldn't take them. Candy, by the way, is the name of my older sister, and that is not her real name. So I had just woken up from a nap because I'm sick, and I was confused to see my great-grandmother coming back inside with the kids with her. Now, to clarify, it's spring break for the kids, so naturally, my sister didn't want to deal with them. My great-grandmother was really upset because she has things that she has to do during the week week that she can't take the kids to, and she was so angry she was almost in tears. So I decided to take it upon myself to let the kids chill for a bit and play, while I had a cup of hot tea to soothe my throat and get myself something to eat before I loaded them back up in the car and drove them home. The two older kids were really upset with their mom because they were excited to see her, and she basically just straight up rejected them, especially my oldest nephew. He got really upset when we were loading him back up in the car. Luckily, we managed to keep him calm with some YouTube videos, and my Nana went back inside so I could take the kids home. When I got to my sister's house, she opened the door and got incredibly upset when I told her I brought the kids home. I calmly explained that I am sick and our heat went out, which it actually did. My great-grandmother is relying on a tiny space heater at the moment, and I'm using a heated blanket. This is the third time our heat has gone out, so our house is pretty cold. My sister told me that she was not taking the kids and demanded that I take them back to my house. She was telling me about all the stuff that she had to do during the week and that she had talked to Nana about keeping the kids for this week, but that was a blatant lie. I kept my voice low and I tried not to argue with her. Also, I wouldn't scare the kids, as they were still in the car, but the driver's side door was open. My sister told me I was scaring the kids. Meanwhile, I was talking low and non-aggressively, and she was standing on the doorstep and was leaned over yelling in my face. I just calmly told her, Candy, either you take your kids or I call the cops and report you for abandonment. These are your only two options. Taking them back to my house is not an option. Basically, I was gentle parenting my older sister. She then threatened to call the cops on me, claiming that I forcibly took them out of my great-grandmother's care just to bring them back to her. And that's when things escalated to a point that I honestly never expected. As a matter of fact, I did not take them out of my great-grandmother's care. Nana happily agreed to let me take the kids home because her back and leg was really bothering her, and she was exhausted. I told her the cops would not take her seriously if she called them for that, but I was more than ready to handle it if it came to that. Then she started the shaking and fake crying, with no tears of course, telling me that she's too overwhelmed. She's dealing with DHS, and she has a mediation hearing to find out if she keeps the kids or not. I simply told her that wasn't my problem, and I gave her the only two options that I had. Oh, and she also accused me of calling DHS on her the moment she opened the door and saw me standing there. I had no idea that DHS was called on her again, and I told her that. She actually seemed to believe me for once and placed the blame on my ex-brother-in-law. She then told me to give her a minute and went inside and closed the door. So I just went back to the car and I sat in the driver's seat to wait for her. The two older kids were freaked out, and the baby was calling out for his mother. After 10 minutes, she came outside and was on the phone, then went back inside for 5 more minutes. I honestly thought she was calling the cops on me. My niece was scared, and I was thinking that I'd have to call the cops on her, because what kind of mother refuses to take her own children, especially when she knows that the house she wanted her kids to stay in for a week no longer has any heat? Like, what is she thinking? Eventually, she came back out and started to unbuckle the kids. The oldest nephew refused to get out of the car for his mom, so I had to pick him up and take him out of the car and draped his coat over him. My older sister literally tried to physically intimidate me by standing over me and yelling in my face. Then she threatened to call the cops on me, and then she started fake crying and trying to guilt trip me again before she realized that I was not giving in. Now, I hate confrontation, so I was having a silent panic attack with my heart pounding and my hands shaking, but I refused to play into her act and I just kept calm, specifically because I didn't want to scare the kids. I had to soothe and comfort the older two children while we were waiting on their mom when she went back into the house because my niece was about to cry, thinking I was going to jail. Candy's entitlement just baffles me, and the fact that she tried to lie to my face, saying that she and Nana had talked all weekend about her keeping the kids, is absolutely ridiculous. She just didn't want to keep her kids over spring break. Luckily, Nana and I have improved our relationship, and she wasn't upset with me at all for taking the kids home. She's old, she's tired, and in a lot of pain now, so she really did not have any energy to take care of the kids. I did end up calling my ex-brother-in-law when I was driving home and explain the situation to him so he could tell his lawyer and get it put on the file he has against my sister. My sister also refused to let me see what the inside of her house looked like, and she is missing the entire top row of her teeth. She looks nearly 50 years old at the ripe age of 25. I will probably make a DHS report to explain everything that happened this evening, and if she does try to accuse me of doing that, I'll own up to it. There was also an unfamiliar car parked in front of her house, and there was somebody inside the house. Her boyfriend doesn't have a car because his license got revoked due to several DUIs, and the last one resulted in him losing his car because he totaled it while under the influence. Honestly, I feel so bad for the kids, and I really hope I never have to deal with that that kind of situation ever again. What an awful situation indeed. Like, your sister sounds like an absolute train wreck, and I can completely understand why the ex-brother-in-law is probably fighting for full custody, because this lady sounds like an awful mother. Like, think about it. She's not even wanting her kids back during spring break. She basically said, no, I don't want them. You can keep them. Like, what are you thinking? That's crazy to me. Not to mention the fact that she was obviously upsetting her kids, like physically upsetting them. They even refused to get out of the car because they were so angry with her. And if I was a kid in that situation, I'd be upset too. So just from what you told us, it really does sound like your sister does not have it all together. And hopefully, for the sake of those kids, they're able to get into a home that actually will take care of them. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My previous job at a hotel was an absolute nightmare, and after being mistreated for 11 days, I decided to quit straight up. Here's what happened. So I wanted to detail some of my jobs I've had previously that led up to the one job I'm going to talk about today. For starters, I used to work at a haunted hotel. I left that and I went to work at a Worst Eastern. I ended up losing that gig for literally no reason, which is no big deal. If there's one thing I learned from 20 years in radio, people get fired, and they get fired for stupid reasons. It's just life. So I got a job at a new hotel about a week after losing the other one. I walked into a job interview and I got it on the spot. They were even promising me that I could move up to management before I even started. I thought to myself, this is it. This is where I'm going to finally find my spot. I'm going to run this joint and everything is going to be completely fine. Now, there's this thing that tends to happen to me whenever something seems too good or too perfect for me. And that's where I think to myself, well, it isn't at all. To start with, everyone in the hotel community that I knew told me this place was an absolute trap. They had been robbed multiple times, all while I was working at other hotels on that same street. And while the hotel did change its name and start over, nothing got better. Some highlights included the guy training me on my first day. For one, I actually knew more about the reservation software and the system than he did. I actually knew more about it than my boss, who literally never came to work unless she was forced to do so against her will. Now, thanks to using the software myself for 4 years, plus being good friends with one of the people who provides tech support to the company, and my boyfriend worked on this software for 10 years at least, so needless to say, I was in a good spot. If there was a trick to something when my boyfriend and I worked together, he would show me how to do it. So I was light years ahead of the guy who was trying to train me. Now, my problem with him is on my first day, while we're standing there during a lull in the day, instead of telling me about the hotel, he starts telling me about the owners and how awful they are. The other male coworker that I had when I worked my first night shift also made me incredibly uncomfortable, in the sense that he was telling me that if he was my boyfriend, which honestly you would never be that lucky, he said he wouldn't allow me to work at night, that a woman's place is at home, especially at night. Keep in mind, this absolute jewel of a human being was also young enough to be my child. Literally, I could have had this kid at 20 years old, and he's standing there telling me where my place was, and that he clearly thought ill of my boyfriend for even allowing me to work at night. Oh, and by the way, this is literally the first time I met him. Now, most of the time we worked alone after training was over, unless you worked in the mornings. Then you had a housekeeping staff there, but for the most part, they steered clear of me and wouldn't talk to me. I've dealt with this at hotels before. The majority of housekeeping are Mexican Americans, and they've been treated like absolute garbage by snobby white kids at the front desk who make all kinds of assumptions about if the housekeepers are legal or even speak English. Like, it's brutal to see up close, and I shut that garbage down when I see it, but I never had the opportunity to get friendly with our housekeepers. And apparently, I did not want to, because the same day I was told by my disembodied voice of a boss on the phone that I had to start putting my purse in the lunchroom or on top of the housekeeping lockers instead of leaving it on the floor behind the desk out of the way, I got robbed. I hate telling people this part, but it's true. I had a pair of sunglasses go missing and $40 disappear out of my wallet. Before you say, well, why didn't you watch the cameras? Let me reassure you, there weren't any cameras on the property. Not at all. Not anywhere. Not even watching the desk where I was counting cash twice a shift. Another fun feature of my job duties at this hotel was if I worked a night shift, I was literally the only person on property after 9 p.m. At 10:30 p.m., we were supposed to collect the barbecue tools from the barbecue area and bring them inside. But I thought to myself, why though? Who on earth is going to steal a spatula? Well, apparently the guy who jumped out of the bushes at me one night while I was doing this. I still have no idea if it was a guest or a homeless person, but I think he was pretty surprised to find out that I have no problem hitting someone with a spatula and the barbecue tongs. We had another another homeless guy break into our pool using a plastic hanger to lift the latch because we didn't chain the gate at this madhouse. I said screw it and let him keep swimming in his underwear because I was not going out there to fight some weirdo with a plastic hanger. Also, as a side note, this was only 11 days into my job, but even still there was more that went on. The owners of this place had a dog that they would bring into the hotel. It wasn't a pet-friendly hotel, but of course the owner's dog isn't a pet. The dog would hang out with us at the desk while the owner did whatever they pretended to do, including never wondering where the general manager was because she was never there. One day I saw the owners go out to their car and they left the dog with us, so I assumed that they would be right back. Logic has no place in that building though, and I get a call 3 hours later from the owners who have in fact left in their car to go to Oregon. They had just forgotten their dog in the office and wondered if I could take it home for the weekend. So I thought to myself, no, this is not happening. Thankfully, another coworker who came in said to me, oh, this happens all the time, I'll take him home. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? A day later, the only semi-sane person I worked with comes running in from the parking garage and says to me, so someone is unalive in the parking lot. It's a Saturday morning. I just call the cops. We walk outside to this car that was parked in our parking garage in 100-degree weather with the windows up and the trunk open. My coworker recognizes the car when we get closer and said she had kicked him out a couple of days before. When the cops arrived, they didn't actually confirm that this guy was unalived or not, but they did tell us that the trunk that was wide open was full of stolen license plates from all over the country. And after that, I just went back inside to the desk and pretend this wasn't a David Lynch movie. So I was there 11 days and this all happened in the first week. During my second week, we got a guest who had MS and was fleeing an awful relationship. All of her belongings were in her car and looking at the reservation for her. The front desk had this woman moving every single night for 2 weeks to another room and she could barely walk. Garbage like this isn't easy to fix if you actually pay attention. I rolled up my sleeves and moved a bunch of one-night stays to other rooms to keep her in this same room for her entire stay. I got in trouble for that, but it's pretty standard hotel practice though, especially because it's easier for housekeepers too. They don't have to do a full checkout clean on an extra room every day. They can just do stayover service for the person, refreshing their towels, taking out the trash, etc. It just makes sense to keep a long-term or longer-term guest in the same room, especially a disabled guest who really needed a room on the ground floor. I also got chewed out for helping this woman with her luggage. Now, I worked for a company that is an international hotel group previously, as well as the Worst Eastern, and helping older or disabled people with their things is standard practice. This woman had a massive Mac Pro that she needed for work, but couldn't lift it onto the desk in her room, so I did it for her. I climbed around and plugged everything in, and she was delighted. I was told I was wasting my time though on unimportant guests, and I was apparently trying to provide 5-star service in a 2-star hotel. I was so upset, but I stuck it out for a few more days. This one woman would come in every morning to get the breakfast and have her water bottle refilled, and I would put up the be right back sign and carry her food back to her room. I did not care about getting in trouble for it, because I'm pretty sure you could have sacrificed a goat in that place and not gotten fired. And then with all things considered and all the things I had seen already, one day I just kind of snapped. I was tired of getting jumped all over, as well as being treated horribly with zero support from management, because the manager never came to work. She sat home on her computer all the time with her online girlfriend, who I heard wasn't even real, but Lord, I don't care about that. That morning, the fire alarm, which didn't actually even call the fire department since they had forgotten to pay the bill, suddenly went off every 5 minutes, and no matter how many times I reset it, it just kept screaming. I was tired of working in a place that didn't care about their guests or their employee safety, and literally made 0 sense, and being asked to babysit the dog, as well as getting yelled at for doing my job better than anyone else. With all that combined, I just quit. Of course, everyone tried to talk me out of it, but I was like, nope, I can't stay here another moment. And so my boyfriend picked me up from work and we just left. When we came back to get my last paycheck and to sign the paper that told them why I quit, there was a guy who was just covered in tattoos, even all over his face, asleep on the lobby couch. I went to the table to sign things, and the table was so wobbly that it actually fell off one leg. I handed the paperwork back to them and was handed a handwritten personal check for my wages there, and then after my coworker said, oh, by the way, that lady you were taking care of, she passed away that afternoon before you quit. You were probably the last person to see her alive. We didn't notice for at least a day. After hearing that, that absolutely devastated me, because the last thing I did before walking out the door, other other than handing in an epic resignation letter detailing all of this nonsense, was take that woman her breakfast. She didn't come down to the lobby, so I called her room before we cleaned up breakfast and asked her if she wanted her usual, and she said she was hungry but couldn't walk down. I asked her if it was okay for me to use the master key to come into her room and bring her food, and she said yes. I loaded up the plate, took it to her room, took her water bottle back to the office to fill it up for her, and took it back to her, and she thanked me. And I locked her room for her, and I went back up front when the fire alarm was going off. It was all so much to handle, and this all happened in 11 days. So with all things considered, this is why I no longer work in the hotel industry. That sounds like an absolute nightmare of a job. Like quite literally, everything that could have gone wrong pretty much did. You were almost robbed multiple times. You even were robbed, like straight up had money stolen out of your purse, most likely from one of your sketchy front desk coworkers. And it sounds like the guys there were just completely ridiculous, saying terrible things and making these weird insinuations. For the sake of this story and explaining it, I did leave a few things out that were pretty sketchy overall, but trust me when I say this, those guys were not right in the head. So good for you for quitting this job. You knew pretty quickly that this was not for you, and these people probably really did suck at their job. And by no means are you obligated to try and work with those people in the slightest, because in my opinion, it sounds like they did not care about this place in the slightest, and you were going above and beyond to try and make this work. So hopefully for the safety of anybody that goes in that previous hotel you worked at, it hopefully will get closed down, because the management and the owner truly do not care. Multiple women that I've gone on dates with have said that I am full of red flags, and I don't know what that means, and I seriously don't know what to do with that information. So I got separated last summer after 8 years, with 5 years of dating and 3 years of being married. Nothing like cheating or domestic problems or financial problems, just minor annoyances and personality differences that accumulated over the years that got exacerbated by the pandemic. I moved out on my own in December. We have a 2.5-year-old daughter together, and she spends weekdays with me and weekends with her mom. My baby's mom was my first real girlfriend, and I only had some hookups and short-term flings before dating her. After moving out, I decided to try online dating for the first time, and I used Tinder to do that, as that was the one I heard the most about. I had a surprisingly good run. I hooked up with over 10 girls, and surprisingly, because I heard my friends complain about it all the time, I would drop off my daughter at daycare on Friday mornings for her mom to pick up in the afternoon, and either go on dates to see someone I already knew over the weekend, usually meeting with 2 to 3 women over the weekend. One thing that I did notice is that anyone who is a bit older or has been in a long-term relationship before, so like 6 or 7 of these women, mentions that I am full of red flags or I just seem sketchy. I have never followed up to ask exactly what they mean by that, since I didn't want any more self-hatred or self-doubt than I already have. Honestly, the separation has been a struggle, but the woman I spent some quality time with on Saturday night mentioned the same thing, and now I can't get it out of my head. I have a well-paying career, I'm passionate about it, I treat my daughter like a princess, and I have my own place downtown in a major city, and I own a car. I treat my dates to the best of my abilities as well, with all the bells and whistles, such as researching where to go in advance, dressing well, paying for everything, holding the door open and hanging up their coat for them, as well as cleaning up after them and everything. So my question would be, what could they possibly mean by saying that I'm full of red flags when they all still seem to want me? I want to know, because eventually I want to settle down again and have a family again, and I want to start working on fixing whatever it is that would make me undesirable or dangerous in their eyes for my future partner. What should I do? This is a tough one, because it really does seem like from the outside looking in, you're doing everything right. But for them to say, oh, there's a lot of red flags, and then not give any kind of explanation really sucks. Like, how on earth are you supposed to have any kind of accurate assumption about what it is that you're doing that's freaking people out if nobody can be honest with you and just be like, hey, it's this, and this? So on that end, I probably would not rely on these dates to try and get an accurate description of who you are as a person, but maybe go to somebody close who can give you an honest opinion. Maybe like a friend or a family member who's going to be honest and not just try to gas you up, because right now it seems like you're just left scratching your head, thinking to yourself, wait, what am I doing wrong? And I can completely understand where you're coming from there. So hopefully you're able to find somebody that can kind of give you some more direction in life, because as of right now, just being told multiple times that you have red flags all over the place without knowing what those red flags are in the first place is in and of itself incredibly frustrating. My entitled family treats me horribly, forcing me to work at a family business and blaming me for everything along the way. But after dealing with this for so long, I simply had enough, and I decided that it's time to get some revenge. So I go out of my way to destroy their business and get it shut down forever. Here's what happened. So for a bit of background, a few years after I started university, a friend of my mother's, who we'll call Cook, that's not their real name, started what can be generously called a restaurant in a small town a couple of hours outside of the city we lived in. It was really a glorified hot dog stand in a golf course. My mother had invested money into this business, so she had a personal stake in ensuring its success. That meant that she would often enlist us to be a waiter when she could not do it herself, and that would include my brother and myself. And let me tell you, my brother hated this guy, though I don't blame him. Cook had no idea how to run a business, and he was completely uninterested in learning. He was also completely computer illiterate and had me set up the Google account for his business. And in order for us to get to work in his business, he would pick one of us up from our home, drive us 2 hours or so out of town, and we were basically stuck there until we were driven back due to the fact that neither of us had a driver's license. And since my brother had problems with this guy, I was the one who more often than not had to spend 2 to 10 days at a time there, stuck in a barely livable house until I was let back home. My mother was no better. She would often volunteer us and tell us that we would be working 2 days in the middle of the week, making job hunting a very difficult thing for my brother and I. Furthermore, she treated us not as employees but as her children, and thus any mistake was clearly our fault, and not because neither of them could train staff, use a computer at all, manage a business in the slightest, or utilize my brother and I in the most effective way, especially considering my brother had already graduated university and I was working towards a double major in business. Furthermore, they were completely unprofessional. They would host shouting matches in Chinese where customers could hear it, and the kitchen was filthy, despite Cook's insistence that the kitchen was the cleanest place in the restaurant. Yeah, right. An ice rink was less slippery than the ground in there, and he would routinely touch cooked food after handling raw meat, and I distinctly remember sweeping up what I thought was a green bell pepper, only to realize that it was a moldy onion ring. Even the stove area was dripping with grease. Literally a giant drop landed on my arm one time. They could not train staff at all. They had hired 5 people in the first year, and none of them came back the next. Cook, in particular, was especially two-faced in how he handled customers. He would smile at them and greet them, remembering details from previous conversations, and then turn to me and say in Chinese about how they're all stupid and they're retired and they have too much time and money on their hands. All of this left a great feeling of resentment for both me and my brother. Not only was it effectively trapping us to work for this completely incompetent individual, but we would basically be getting nothing out of it. This was especially frustrating for me because as a business student at the time, I could see all the places they could improve. I even offered to write up some policies, do some inventory management, and take a look at the administrative side, just to help out and get some experience for myself. But they kept insisting that they didn't need it. And sure, we were paid the bare minimum, and the guy did know how to cook, but we have to bear the brunt of their frustration while hiding the fact that we were sick of helping out, and that led all the way up until we just simply couldn't do it anymore. Last year, I graduated university. It was not as happy of a time as it should have been because my grandfather passed away the week before. I couldn't even celebrate the night before I walked the stage because I had to give part of the eulogy the previous day, and I had to mediate an incident between my brother, my mother, and the cook, all because my mother simply couldn't do it. So no pre-graduation shots for me because I was stuck on the phone for 3 hours listening to how insensitive Cook was over the fact that my grandfather had just passed away. But I figured that once I walked the stage and I had my diploma in my hand, I could spend the next week or so job hunting. But that was no dice. Immediately after I graduated on Monday afterwards, my mother volunteered me once again, telling me that I had to work 10 days in that restaurant, and I lasted 6 days before the incident of this story finally happened. Now, by all accounts, it wasn't that busy of a day to start off with. There was a breakfast brunch for Father's Day that barely anyone attended, and most people that did show up wanted to order off the menu, but both Cook and my mother were incredibly stressed out, and both of them were taking it out on me. My mother spent the day micromanaging me and finding flaws in every little thing that I did, like cleaning an empty table, over clearing plates from a table out on the deck, over to not immediately refilling coffee or water when a glass or mug was half full, or just not touching a table every 5 minutes. Cook just kept shouting a lot and gave contradictory orders every 2 minutes, but it was the combination of my mother and Cook screaming at me for a mistake I didn't even make, refusing to listen to me, and Cook mocking me for breaking down in tears that made me realize that not only could I not handle it anymore, but I wanted to burn the place to the ground. I booked a flight out of the province that day and left a week later. I didn't even tell my mother when or why why I left. Now fast forward to when I get some petty revenge. Remember how I said that not only were they completely unprofessional, but also completely computer illiterate? See, despite the fact that I was no longer in the province, I still had all the login information for the business. And furthermore, because I knew all the laws that he blatantly refused to learn, I then knew all the violations that he had committed in the business. So for the first part of my revenge, I signed out of his computer from my Google account. I don't think it was really necessary, since he never used that computer in the first place for anything, but I wanted to make sure that he and my mother wouldn't be able to stop me from what I was gonna do. Before I left the province, I claimed the business in review sites using the email and the business phone number. Then I blasted every single review, positive or negative, with all the garbage he used to say about customers. Any negative review was immediately mocked, and any positive review was left with a note saying thank you or me calling them incredibly cheap. Any questions were met with hostility, and it basically boiled down to me saying I'm right and you're wrong. I also make mentions about how he didn't wash his hands in the kitchen, and the stuff they're yelling in Chinese are insults about uppity customers. Given that it was a tourist-based town, I'm fairly certain that the deep dip in sales that my brother mentioned later on was because of all the things that I did, and no one suspected a thing, because my mother and cook didn't know how to work the internet, and my brother didn't care enough to look up the business. Next, I meticulously documented all the complaints that I had between my brother and myself, as well as the ones from the few people Cook had hired, but never kept because he could not train them. I reported the 2 times that I slipped in his kitchen, incidents where he refused to wash his hands in between handling salad and raw meat simply because it took too long, and I handed those off to the health service department. I also anonymously informed the tax revenue agency that he was severely underreporting income, as employees were instructed only to write down the credit and debit receipts to report in sales. The third part of my revenge wasn't really my part, to be honest. Rather, it was because of his own incompetence. As I said before, he was completely computer illiterate. I didn't even have to lock out the person he hired to do accounting, because he didn't bother reporting his expenses except hand them a garbage bag full of receipts. To be honest, I felt kind of sorry for them, but because their hands were tied, they could not dispute any of the claims that I made. What I did do, however, was text them all the things that my mother and cook said about them, so they wouldn't even bother trying to defend him. They then quit about a month before everything went down, meaning that Cook was left holding the bag. So naturally, given that the business wasn't making near as much money to make rent, let alone pay off all his fines that he was being slapped down with, the government repossessed everything. From everything in the dinky little house that he was renting for business purposes to every single fork and knife that he bought. Because of all the health code violations, he couldn't find a job as a cook again, which was his only job for about 30 years. And because the tax revenue agency knew how bad he was with managing businesses, they naturally denied him when he requested a permit to open up a growing operation. As far as I know, he's no longer in contact with my family, but his brother-in-law, who is my mom's hairstylist, mentioned that he had to move somewhere else to get away from all the bad reputation. My mother mostly just got off scot-free because all the business permits were under his name, but she lost quite a lot of money, and last I heard from my family, had to move into a smaller house. And the best part about it is that no one knew that I was the one who did all of this. My brother suspected it as he relayed details of what happened to me, but I never confirmed it. But even if he did know, it's not like he would tell my parents in the first place, because he hated that place just as much as I did. As for me, I'd like to say that everything's sunshine and roses, but my decision to impulsively move provinces has had its ups and downs. I did manage to find a place to live and a place to work, so at least I'm alive and living. It is hard, but I'd rather be doing this than ever go back there. What a crazy story. You literally went out of your way to destroy that business. You seriously must have been hurt pretty badly by these people to not only report them to the state, but basically to hit them in every angle you possibly could think of. And that is awesome in my opinion, because seriously, the way they were treating you was completely inappropriate. They were taking their frustrations out on you specifically, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. Like, you did not deserve to be treated like that at all. So hopefully your mom and this cook can learn their lessons, that maybe they need to run their business a little bit better in the future. Otherwise, their careers as well as their money is just gonna go down the drain once again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. I'm convinced that my husband has a second family with 2 other children that I don't know about, and I honestly don't know what to do. So for a bit of context, we've been married for 20 years. In 2017, I found him engaging in online affairs. Now, that's all I've found found evidence of, but I've lived the entire time with the feeling that something was wrong, because everything you'd expect a remorseful person to do and think, he's the complete opposite. He's also randomly critical and impossible to get along with, and displays other behavioral red flags. So I was always suspicious, but I never could come up with anything that fit. At the end of last year, something happened and I finally zeroed in on someone. Quickly, everything began falling in place. All the questions I've had and observations about unusual behavior patterns all started to really click together. And with that, a lot of memories began resurfacing of things I didn't know the significance of at the time. It all fits. I've speculated on various possibilities in the past, but my suspicions never lasted longer than a few days. This time with this woman, it's been since October, and I haven't been able to shake it since. The more I put it together, the more it adds up. I don't have anything concrete, but I feel strongly that he's been having an on-again, off-again affair with a younger married woman and is the biological father of her 2 sons, who are about 4 years old and 2 years old. I think she was probably in the picture in 2017. I know she's not the only one. That discovery was an entirely different person, and she was one of the many online affairs. He was also on all the dating apps, but swore nothing physical ever happened. Both of the kids remind me of my son, and my 17-year-old daughter even commented on how they look weirdly like her brother when he was young. Here's the main point. Recently, I was searching for a file, and I saw the folder with Facebook data that I pulled in 2020. I found in his ad interests the words bunk bed, infant, lawyer, lawsuit, teddy bear, and motherhood, on top of a plethora of other interests. In his market searches, it goes over a bunch of children's clothes, like dino skeleton lamp, a loft bed, a student desk, Mickey Mouse pocket watch, a Catwoman costume, and here's the other kicker that comes along with it, an engagement and wedding ring. Now mind you, our kids are fully grown. The youngest is a senior in high school, and we don't have anyone close with kids that age to buy for. And there's no way in the world he'd think of ever buying me a $4,000 bracelet. He has criticized every dime I've spent for years. And in that same vein of thought, there's no way I would ever let him buy a $4,000 bracelet. To me, this is the first concrete evidence I've found to back up my suspicions. But I've been suspicious for so long and had to accept less than satisfactory explanations for questionable things so many times that I have a hard time determining what's a big deal and what isn't. His explanation is always along the lines of saying, "Oh, I don't remember," or even saying, "I have no idea why I would ever look at that." A couple of years ago, around the same time this was pulled, he left a tab open on his computer where he'd been looking at legal sites about divorce, specifically the laws for child support in our state. At the time, he'd been irritable, and we were arguing a lot, and I assumed he was thinking about our kids, but even that upset me, because he's always insisted that he wanted to stay married. He did then too, but said that he was just looking at it in case I decided to divorce him. About a year before that, the same thing happened, except it was adultery as grounds for divorce in our state in the search bar. He gave me the same explanation, though it never sat right for me for a few reasons. For starters, I have been the one putting all the work in to try and fix things, and he always maintained he never did anything physical, so it wouldn't even be an issue. He said he didn't know that for sure, and that's why he looked it up. There has also been 2 incidents, once in 2018 and once in 2020, where I found him looking at pregnancy-related stuff. At this point, I have reason to believe he won't ever leave me. There's no way our kids or his parents would ever be okay with it. I feel pretty sure it's all just a fantasy, largely spurred by this other lady, but it's something that he would never act on. I have no idea if or how much her husband knows about the situation. I'm also sure that my husband will continue to deny anything he hasn't already confessed to, and that he feels both trapped in the affair and in the marriage, and in guilt, shame, and lies, and isn't brave enough to do anything to get out of it. That doesn't mean I want to stay married if this is true. I would forgive him for anything if he just showed me true remorse for it. But if it comes to that, he is honestly past hope, and so is our marriage. He knows of my suspicions and claims he's never spoken to that woman but like 3 times. They attended the same church as us, and he always refers to her as that woman, as if I'm questioning him like he's Bill Clinton or something. I then asked him that if that whole family moved away tomorrow and you never saw or heard of them ever again, would it have any impact on his life? He said without hesitation, "I would not care at all if I never saw them again. It makes no difference to me." The man I married would not have been able to speak a lie of that caliber without emotion giving it away. So now I'm honestly at a loss, and I seriously don't know what to do. This is seriously a sticky situation, because it sounds like this guy is absolutely gaslighting you, and you've already already caught him once talking to women online, which is not okay in the slightest. And sure, all you have right now are just assumptions about his character and what he's actually doing, so it's hard to pinpoint if he's telling the truth or if any of this is even real in the first place. But I mean, a lot of the stuff really does point to him basically cheating on you. I mean, the pregnancy stuff, as well as the stuff about the toys, as well as about how he can get divorced and basically get away with all of this or something along those lines. I mean, it all is super sketchy, so it honestly makes sense that you would be suspicious. So it's hard to say what you really should do. There are two possibilities. Either he's telling the truth and this is all just a weird circumstance, or he really is cheating on you and he really does have a second family. I think if you really wanted to get to the bottom of this, you could hire a private investigator, but if there's nothing that comes out of it and he finds out, it could eventually lead to some more friction in your marriage. So hopefully, regardless of what you decide to do, it all works out for you. Because based on what you've described, this definitely does not sound like a good situation. And hopefully for your sake, as well as your kid's sake, your husband isn't cheating on you with another woman. My boyfriend broke up with me because I am having trust issues with him, and I want to go back and have a second chance with him, but I'm just not sure if that's a good idea, and I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I were together for 4.5 years. We only saw each other once a week due to distance and schedules. My relationship was far from perfect, but we loved each other from the day we first met and understood each other in ways others never could. Still, we're both very stubborn and always wanted to be right, but most times it didn't get in the way. The major problem we had was this female friend of his, whom I suspected was trying to get with him. He always defended her, thinking I was simply being jealous, until she told him that she liked him. They were apart for some time, and he didn't tell me for a couple of months. I was mad he didn't tell me, but things went back to normal. Eventually, she started being even more obvious, and I warned him, but he didn't believe me until she tried to get him to spend some quality time with her, if you know what I mean. He lied to me about where he was, spent time alone with her after that, as well as many other things, and only told me about it a few days later. Allegedly, he wanted to tell me face to face, but it just didn't happen. I was so hurt, and my trust issues came back. He eventually cut contact with her, and we created some boundaries, and I gave him this second chance. Things went fine during summer vacations, but in September, he went back to college, and I had to adjust to her existence again. The first time he went out with his friends, there were some minor issues that we sorted out, but these little things got to me and made me crazy worried about what could happen, to the point that I got angrier and angrier with her presence. Whenever he hung out with that friend group, I would get mad or sad pretty much no matter what happened. And whenever there was any sort of problem, I'd talk about everything all over again. And this last month, whenever something went wrong, I would almost always bring up how I couldn't fix my trust and that maybe it was easier if we just broke up. He then tried telling me that this was being unfair, as he had indeed changed his behavior and in the process even damaged other friendships just to make things better for me. He said that I needed to work on my trust, but I never listened because I was too focused on the fact that he hurt me and messed up before. Last month, it was the girl's birthday and he texted her and said it was to be respectful and to make sure his friends won't pull apart even more. Even though I understood what he meant, I felt like it was too much, and I felt like he was hiding something and ended up asking to see his phone. He gave it to me, but I felt guilty and I just couldn't do it. Then he said I felt like we needed to either break up, which we both didn't want, so we chose to get some space and only act like friends for a while. We were out together supposedly as friends this weekend when we started to fight, and I did many of the things I said before. He broke up with me, he felt like his efforts weren't appreciated, my lack of trust was a big issue, and all the instability was hurting him. I did not see the effort he was putting into making things better until we broke up. It all dawned on me after that. After reflecting, I realized I wasn't a good girlfriend this last few months. I used to do a whole lot of little things to make him happy that I just stopped doing because I was too self-absorbed on the idea that he was going to mess up again. I did feel the instability, but in my mind, he messed up first, so he was to blame for all of it. I know I never gave us a fair chance after what happened by acting the way that I did, but he told me that besides this, there really weren't any other problems. We decided to remain friends, but as he needed time, I promised I wouldn't contact him until April 15th, that being the day we're supposed to meet up so that I can return him some of his things. I'm starting therapy to help with my trust issues again this week, and to help understand the reasons behind the rest of my attitude towards him and our problems. Right now, I decided on at least asking for a second chance. Besides fixing my issues and waiting, is there anything I could still do? Should I keep my promise and not contact him until April 15th? month? What if he texts me? I mean, how should I even act in that situation? Should I ask for a second chance that day if I feel I can act better than before, or should I ask him later? What should I do? In my opinion, I don't think this is a good relationship. Your boyfriend not only really did mess up, but also you seem to be obsessing over the fact that he messed up. And yeah, towards the second half of your relationship, I can definitely see where there would be tension when he's trying to make things right, but at the end of the day, he did mess up first, and you did give him a second chance. So I really do see both of you at fault. Like, honestly, you both need to work on stuff. But in that same vein of thought, I think it's time to let this relationship go and move on. You two are clearly incompatible, and you both are not going to work out in my opinion. And this honestly should have ended a lot sooner. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would not be looking to try and get back with this guy. I think you just need to let it go and get it over with quickly. That way you can mourn your loss and prepare to move forward with your life. Because honestly, this doesn't seem like a good relationship. And I think you can find someone who will treat you a lot better and will be much more compatible for you in the future. An entitled new employee tries to boss me around, claiming that he's going to get my car towed because I parked in a spot that he didn't like. And as a result, he was completely embarrassed in his first day interview, and I couldn't be more happy to watch someone get put in their place. Here's what happened. So I work for a company whose offices are located in 3 adjacent residential apartments. We installed 2 doors in between to create one big sprawling office. There isn't much parking because it is a residential area, so employees are allowed to park in the no parking signed area. This keeps our neighbors happy that we don't use all the spots available, and maintenance can ask us to move if they need to get into one of those areas. The first 2 apartment doors have signs directing customers. The 3rd door is not marked because it houses the corporate officers that don't deal with any kind of customers, and I just so happen to work in that 3rd office. We also have an extremely casual dress code. I'm getting out of my car one morning and collecting my soda, lunch, and everything I need when I hear a voice behind me saying to me, "You can't park there." I turn around and I see a man leaning outside against the wall playing on his phone. I thought that maybe he was some kind of third-party vendor waiting for maintenance to unlock the door I was blocking. So I said to him, "Is maintenance on its way to let you in?" The man then looks at me and says, "What are you talking about? The sign says no parking. That means you can't park here." I figured he was a new tenant in the building and continued to just walk into the building. I said to him, "I actually am allowed to park here. It leaves more open spaces for residents. Have a good day." This guy then seriously steps in front of me, looks at me and says, "You need to move your car or you will be towed." And at this point, I'm kind of weirded out. So I say to him, "Excuse me, I work here and I am allowed to park here. Please move out of my way." The man then looks at me and says, "We'll see about that." He then marches through the door ahead of me and starts walking to the offices. I follow him up the hallway, but stop at the 3rd door, unlock it, and walk into my office area. After lunch, the general manager came in and grabbed my keys to move my car. And mind you, this happens all the time, so I didn't give it a second thought. That afternoon, the general manager brings the new employee into my office to introduce him to me. I'm the financial controller and the human resources part of the management team. I stand up and hold my hand out to the man, whose face is completely drained of color. He stammers out that it's nice to meet me and hands me all of his new hire paperwork. I ask him to sit down, and the general manager leaves him with me to get set up on the systems and explain his privileges, as well as everything else with the job. The man then says, "Excuse me, I need to step out for a moment to the restroom." And as he leaves, the general manager comes back into the office and sits down with a big smile. I look at him and I say, "I think he's a little embarrassed. He yelled at me for parking this morning." The general manager then says, "Yeah, it's a little more than that. He came in an hour before we scheduled him this morning and blustered to the receptionist about you for half an hour before I went out and got him started filling out paperwork just to try and shut him up." I explained our parking policy to him in orientation and explained our towing procedures. I caught him at the break saying that he wouldn't tolerate illegal parking and would get this place in line now that he was here. We happened to walk by the parking stickers as we were showing him around, and sure enough, he took the bait and swiped one. I called the tow company and warned him that he might call and to just play along but not to send anyone. As soon as he tagged your car, I moved it to an empty garage. And it was right about this time the guy comes back in looking like he saw a ghost. He looks at me and says, "Ma'am, I don't know how to tell you this, but I had your car towed. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the charges and go get it right now." The general manager then looks at him and says, "What do you mean? Who gave you the number for the towing company?" The man then confessed that he got it off the parking stickers in the closet. The general manager then questions him even further. He says to him, "Who told you to sticker cars? This isn't even your area." And at this point, I thought the man was going to start melting into the floor. He He said, "I'm so sorry. I just thought she was lying about working here. She went into the apartment, not the office. She wasn't in dress clothes. I don't know. I thought I could catch the truck before it came, but her car is gone." Now, at this point, I was having a hard time keeping a straight face through this, and probably looked mad due to the strain of not laughing. The general manager then said to him, "Well, maybe this will teach you not to assume you know how things should be run. You were running your mouth all day long about all the things that you are going to change, and you didn't listen when I explained our parking and towing policies. Now I'm gonna go get her car out of the garage I parked it in, and you are going to get set up on the system. Maybe tomorrow you will come in with a better attitude." He looked relieved and also miserable to be chastised on his first day, so I got him set up and even had him laughing by the end. He showed up the next day with a soda for me and a much better attitude overall, so thankfully it seems like he learned his lesson. Wow, talk about making a horrible impression on the first day. Can you imagine how embarrassing that would be to not only act like some know-it-all, but to then do that to the person who runs the HR department as well as the general manager? Like seriously, you have to be a complete moron to do that. Like on the first day of work, you don't start going around and acting like you're gonna change everything about the office. You have gotta feel it out first. You've gotta figure out what the culture is and everything else. So honestly, this guy had it all wrong. He was doing everything incorrectly on your first day of work, and seriously, he needed this reality check. So hopefully for the rest of his time working there, he has a better attitude moving forward, because otherwise, I seriously don't think he's gonna last very long in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for ghosting my friend because I was jealous of her? So to start out, for some context, we have to go back a few years when I was in the 8th grade. In the beginning of the year, I'm in my tech class and seated at a neighboring table from this girl who we will call Linda. Linda is not her real name. We exchanged a few looks as our teacher was explaining his class. This continued until we started our first project. Me being a very friendly and talkative person, I was making some small talk with her, asking her what her last name was, what her favorite subject was, so on and so forth. This continued for the next few days. Then I introduced some of my current friends to her. We all got along and basically became one giant friend group. Things seemed pretty well overall. The only thing being was that my parents were a bit skeptical about her at first. And whenever I would talk to Linda about her childhood, it would get confusing with her living with her dad and having problems with her mom. I won't go into details for the sake of privacy, but just know that it was complicated. Nevertheless, I continued to hang out with her, and the rest of our friend group and my parents were okay with it, as long as I followed some typical behavioral rules. Fast forward a few months, and she invited us over to her house a few times. We could walk there since it wasn't too far from our school, and everything was perfectly fine. We would hang out at the park, at the school, you know, the usual stuff. Now here's where things start to take a turn. She confesses that she is kind of falling for me, and this is around 7-ish months after we first met. I was very scared at first, and I didn't know what to do. I later found out that she was talking to a person that moved out of our school a few years back. We'll call her Amelia, that's also not her real name. And it turns out that Linda and Amelia were talking in private about the situation, and Amelia blackmailed her into confessing to me, which is very wrong, but I see the situation that she's stuck in. Linda was worried that this was going to ruin our relationship as friends. I left her in the dark until the next day of school, when I had this conversation with her about how this doesn't really change anything, but however, in my mind, I was freaking out. Fast forward another month, and all of us are happily hanging out together during graduation when we move on to our high school years. During the summer, things start to get a little strange. Normally during the summer, I kind of ghost my friends since none of them talk about anything of interest except for homework. This summer was the exception, and I was hanging out with them a few times. We headed to Dunkin' Donuts one day when Linda was treating everybody to some donuts. I just sat there in the corner and she didn't even acknowledge me. I just sat normally at a different table since I didn't have any money on me. Another one of my friends finally noticed I was gone and she treated me to a donut. I still thank her for that. Then Linda says that she is starting to like this girl who I'm gonna call as Layla, all while completely ignoring the fact that I was standing 3 feet away from her. It was as if I was invisible. I then spent the rest of the day there and finally go home after that, sleeping on the events that just happened. I know Layla a little. She was a shy girl and was in a corner for most school events. That's all I really know. Another time we were at the park and they were starting to talk about topics that made me feel a little uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. And they started to do things that didn't make me feel very nice. I called my mom and she pretty much picked me up soon after that. Eventually, I was starting to break away from everybody. And fast forward another month, and it's the beginning of the school year. Linda then announced that she and Layla were dating. This was a shock to me, and once again, I was invisible to her. I tried to hang out together with the rest of the group, but it was weird for me with Layla around. It got so bad to the point where another one of my friends noticed and gave me false information about a carnival hangout that we had planned. Things between me, Linda, and Layla were kind of getting awkward. Then, all of a sudden, I am kicked out of our Discord group chat. I try to get back in, and apparently Linda is mad at me. It turns out she completely changed her pronouns, which I was completely unaware of at the time and wasn't happy with me about that. It takes a while, but this is where the final straw comes in. AmITheA sent me a large text message which says the following: "You suck. You think you can just ask to join back into the server when you don't even talk that much and still consider us your friends?" All while throwing a variety of cuss words at me. Now, I was beyond upset. I ended up blocking AmITheA and Linda, since she was the one that told her about the situation in the first place. Another one of her friends, who was actually nice to me, gave me one last chance to join the Discord group again, but I refused. I did not want to be part of a friend group that insulted me at every turn they got, and that is where everything fell apart. Since AmITheA was at another school, staying away from her wasn't a problem, but with Linda, all I do now is keep my head down around her and pass by, not giving her any looks or side eyes. Now, Linda was falling back on grades and has gone full emo over the next 2 years. I don't know what to do anymore. I usually am not the one who holds grudges and stays angry, but with there being one person that I feel like I wronged, I'm wondering if I should make things right. If you think of it, Linda really didn't do anything wrong. It was me who just decided to block her without good reason. My parents are unsure, but my gut is telling me I should. What should I do? First off, I want to say that this friend group sounds really toxic. Like, these do not sound like very good people in the slightest. And it sounds like they were ready to kick you to the curb at a moment's notice. And that's not fair for you in the slightest. So if anything, maybe look at this as a blessing in disguise. You are officially out of that drama, and you don't have to deal with that anymore. And sure, you could probably go back to Linda and apologize or something along those lines, but I bet you it's only gonna rekindle some kind of weird fire in them, and they're just gonna treat you like garbage again. So if I was in your shoes, regardless of what you choose to do, I would think about myself first. I would ask myself the question, does this friend group make me happy? And are these people even my friend in the first place? If the answer is yes to both of those, then sure, give it another try. But if you seriously answer no to either of those questions to yourself, then maybe it is time to think really hard about your situation and try and figure out if these people are good for you in the first place. My boss is forcing me and 2 other people to cancel a trip that we have planned for since before the pandemic, and I'm honestly so frustrated and I don't know what to do. So to start off, I've been a member of my university choir for 6.5 years. This choir was my safe space and helped me get through a lot of stress during my college life, which was also the time we were scheduled to go on tour to Italy for a choir festival. I have carried this choir on my back during the pandemic, trying to prevent us from falling apart, and I stayed president up until my last semester, which was fall of 2022. My friend, let's call her Stacy, had stepped up to the plate of presidency after I had left and has done an amazing job. Now onto the issue at hand. Stacy had given me the opportunity to work at a singer at a dinner show that portrayed our culture. I have been working with them for 7 months now. My other friend, Anastasia, had also just auditioned recently to work with us. Anastasia is also in the choir. The problem I am having is that the 3 of us are the returnees in the group, meaning that the other 3 girls are new and need guidance from their section to perform their parts to the highest of standards. Our boss refuses to approve our leave for this trip because they believe that our job should be our life. Nothing is more important than this job. We will be gone for 2.5 weeks, and there are only 2 other singers at work who would cover. There's also a rule that only one person can request leave at a time. I had to talk to the other singers, and they said that they would be able to handle it, especially since Anastasia will only be gone for 1 week. She will not be staying for the whole tour due to family issues. My issue, I guess, is that my boss expects us to cancel something that we've been working really hard on, and it's something that we've planned for and we were looking forward to for 4 years now. And this is all with a choir that we've dedicated so much to in the last 5 years, and they want us to cancel that over a job that I just got last year? It is seriously not fair. And also, I only work at most 2 nights a week. One of the people going on tour will only be gone for a week, so she will be back working and isn't planning on staying for the duration of the trip. It's all so very frustrating, and I seriously don't know what to do. Your boss sounds like an absolute jerk. You spend all these years working on something that's important to you just for your boss basically to get in the way, and that is not fair in the slightest. And it sounds like you have coverage for the most part for your job. Like you have two people there that are going to be able to handle the demands of your employment pretty easily while you're away. And also, how can they not understand that this is a big deal? Like you're literally going to do something that is once in a lifetime, and you've waited 4 years to do it and have wanted to do this for such a long time. So seriously, I would go on this trip and not worry about that in the slightest. You can always find another job in my opinion, because from the sounds of it, this boss is very entitled, and it doesn't sound like they're a good boss in the slightest. So if I was in your shoes, I would be going on that trip regardless. And if I have a job coming back or not, that doesn't really matter to me. I'm not gonna miss out on this once in a lifetime opportunity just to work at a job that I'm only there for maybe 2 nights a week. And if it seriously goes south, then guess what? You can find another job. And I bet you'll find one that has a much more reasonable manager that will at least let you do these cool things and not try and talk you out of it. And all under the guise that they don't have enough people to cover work while you're gone. Today, I messed up by quitting my dream job that I worked over 3 years to get. And now I feel like a complete failure and I don't know what to do. So as the title suggests, I just quit the police academy a few days ago, and I'd worked so hard to get there. I quit because I think I was having serious anxiety issues, as well as doubts about my happiness in the job. I was fine until a few weeks ago when I started having very negative thoughts about the job, and then I learned we were going to be CS gassed. Part of the training was slightly hazing in the first few weeks. It took me into a primal place in my brain where I felt like an animal and I was not myself anymore. I am 26 and recently married with no children. My wife has been amazing and supported me through whatever I have decided to do. I think that my stress and worry is rubbing off on and affecting her though. I am stressed because I really had no backup plan. I have enough emergency money to pay rent and food for the next few months, and I know I can get a new job, and I am actively searching right now. I am mainly stressed out because I have no idea what in the world I want to do with my life anymore. I spent the last 3 years working security and going through the process of becoming a police officer. Right now, I just want to get a good career going that pays a decent $60,000 a year because I prefer to just live comfortably. I have an associate's of general arts degree and was thinking about going into accounting or another business major and working my way through school in a normal job. I feel I have let my family and friends down for giving up on what I thought was my dream. I honestly feel ashamed and I feel like a failure, and I seriously don't know what to do. I don't think this is a bad thing in the slightest. Sure, it took you a long time to try and get this job, but the second you get in the police academy, you realize, oh wait, no, I don't want to do this. This is not for me, and this is absolutely something I don't want in my life. And honestly, if you were stressed out during the training, my guess is that you're probably going to be overwhelmed on the job. Just imagine what it's going to be like as a police officer if you're faced with some kind of danger and that fight or flight kicks back in right when you're on the job. Like that seriously would be very scary, and it's honestly a good thing that you're taking this so seriously. So I wouldn't feel ashamed or too bad on yourself in the slightest. You did the best that you could, and you actually did get into the police academy in the end, and you actually gave it a try, which is a lot more than a lot of people can actually say. So just to reiterate, you didn't mess up, you're not a failure, and honestly, you're only human. Things happen in life and you can't always foresee what's gonna go wrong, but at least this is a good opportunity for you to reevaluate your life. Whether that means going back to school or doing something else, you now know what you don't want to do. And hopefully for the sake of you and your family, you're able to find something that you do enjoy that won't cause you any panic and will be something that's more up your alley. My partner gets rejected by just about everybody he ever meets, and in fact, he just doesn't have very many friends in the first place, and it's really starting to bother me and I don't know what to do. So my partner didn't really have any friends before meeting me in university. He was kind of friends with some of the nerdy kids in grade school, but I guess at one point they all shunned him and no one wanted to be friends with him. So he was alone until he moved away for university. As far as I know from his family and cousins, he never did anything to deserve the treatment that he got. He did really well in school. He was the state triple jump champion. He's quite attractive, and generally he's a very sweet and calm person. Then he met me and my friends group during university. We are all, except for him, either gay or lesbians. He was always a great friend to us and was basically our protector when we went to straight bars or to the clubs. He never tried to make a move on any of us and was always a great conversationalist as well as a super smart guy. We all assumed and we really couldn't believe that we were his first real friends. We even set him up with girls and he had a couple of relationships. Eventually, all the partying caught up with him and he figured that all the drinking and all the other substances were common with our friends and it wasn't really for him. Since that came about, we started our relationship and it's hard to imagine why he didn't have any friends growing up. He has basically been the perfect partner to me. He's become quite successful without much effort. He's a board member of a charity. He's really active and has a lot of different interests. But what I've noticed is that over and over again, he tried to make friends with people he meets through his interests or also through work, and he's either basically shut down right away or over time they have said or done things to him that make him realize that he has yet again been excluded intentionally. The most recent example was that of a group of his coworkers planned to go to a UFC event in Vegas without saying anything to him, and he is probably the biggest fan of that in this office. We go 2 to 3 times a year because he gets tickets and a backstage pass basically because of his board position. Well, it was quite a surprise to him to see a bunch of his coworkers who essentially hid from him that they were going to the event. One of them said to him, "Oh, we didn't know that you'd be up for a trip like this," despite my partner telling them in the past that he'd get them tickets if they wanted to go with him. This is just one example of what I am feeling like is some kind of pattern. I don't understand what's going on, but it is starting to make me wonder if there is something about him that I just don't see, or if he's acting differently when he's not around me. I've even started noticing this with my other family members. Despite my partner having basically renovated our entire house by himself and him having a master's in engineering, I see no one in the family asking him for advice or for any kind of help with any DIY projects, despite him offering to help multiple times. My brother-in-law even paid money to a contracting company who massively overcharged him, and their engineers made a couple of errors that my partner eventually caught. I eventually asked my parents if there was anything wrong with him that I'm just not seeing, and all they could really say was, "Oh, don't be silly, he's fine." Yet I've heard many times my father extol what a great guy my sister's husband is, despite him being the stereotypical used car salesman. Really though, I feel so lucky to have met this guy, and I can see it hurts him the way people treat him, despite what he projects outwardly. I don't know what to do, because the more and more I see this, the thought creeps in my mind that something must be wrong for people to act the way they do towards him, and I just can't seem to wrap my head around it, and I don't know what to do. This is a really strange situation, because it sounds like your partner really is a good person, but then when you're not with them, everybody else kind of just shuts him down. So either everybody is just super jealous of him and they don't want him in their group, or he's doing something that's putting people off. But it really seems kind of arbitrary, and it doesn't seem very clear-cut in the slightest. So maybe just pull over like a family member or one of your friends and pull him to the side and be like, "Hey, what do you think of my partner? Like, what's going on? Why is he not included in anybody's groups?" Because there has to be something happening for everybody to just be rejecting him left and right. So hopefully something can be done where you can find the truth, because this definitely seems really sketchy, and with all things considered, it really just doesn't make sense why everybody around him would just immediately reject him and decide that they don't want him in their group. An entitled crazy flat earther tries to convince me that the earth is flat, but after 2 hours of him rambling on about his beliefs, despite the fact that I never asked him about it, I had simply had enough. Here's what happened. Okay, we've all heard about flat earthers, but if you're even remotely sane and reasonable, you probably think that it's just some very elaborate inside joke that people keep perpetuating because they find it amusing to do so. And you know what? That's what I thought as well. But this is when Gary enters the scene. Gary is not their real name, but he was staying at the hotel with his teenage son for the weekend. They had a weekend trip planned and were in the area, so they needed a place to stay. Gary was a pretty unassuming guy at first glance, and his son had that impatient silence about him that most teenagers have. But otherwise, everything is a-okay. I come in the next morning to relieve the night auditor, and Gary is standing at the desk, talking passionately about something. The night auditor made eye contact with me in a way that basically said, "Oh my gosh, please help me." But I silently giggled and continued into the office, where I overheard Gary say something about sun rotation and Earth as a plane. I assumed he was poking fun at the flat Earth idea and joking about the entire thing. 5 minutes later, the night auditor walked back into the office with a handful of papers and stared at me unblinkingly as he ripped them up and shoved them into the garbage. He gave me my report and then told me good luck as he left. And I thought that was it. It seemed that Gary had gone up to his room, so I thought honestly nothing of it. 10 minutes later, he comes back down to the desk and introduced himself. So I say, "Hi, nice to meet you, I guess." I didn't know what he expected me to say, and honestly, as it turns out, I didn't have to say anything. He could speak more than enough for both of us. He began to talk about the basics of flat earth theory, and I laughed about it and shook my head a bit. I thought he was joking, but as he kept going, I realized he was completely and utterly serious, and the mirth in my eyes turned to horror. Gary Gary barely stopped for a breath. It took me a minute to tune back into what he was saying after the realization that he was serious hit me. He starts pulling out these resources. He was obviously very well prepared for this, and I'm not talking about a couple of random sources that he mentioned in passing here or there. I'm talking Bible verses, mathematical equations, diagrams, drawings, websites, YouTube videos, measurements, tools, and so much more. My hope withered more and more with each new resource he presented to me, and I found myself stuck in a place where I really did not know what to do, and I seriously just wanted him to stop. But he still kept going, and I seriously cannot believe how weird he was. So going on, he showed me clips of videos, he drew pictures as he was explaining, he worked out the mathematical equations in front of me and explained every step. He wrote down a dozen URLs for me to look into, and he referenced specific Bible verses and emphasized the word choice in them. It went on and on. At this point, it's been an hour and a half, and I've tried to walk away about a dozen times. So I eventually just said to him, I have to work now, and I went to sit in the office and tried extremely hard to look busy, but he just kept talking. Every time I had to go out to the front desk, he had something to show me. Every time I walked back into the office, he spoke more clearly so I could hear him. I eventually asked him why people don't fall off the earth if it's flat, and he said that there's a great ice wall surrounding the edges of the earth. I asked why it's not common knowledge, and he says that the ice walls are guarded by a branch of the military, and they make people turn around before they can see the walls. He said that this information is kept under wraps because the government doesn't want to admit that they're using so many resources to guard these walls, because according to him, if everyone knew about it, there would be a riot. I managed to grimace a smile out of my mouth as I politely nodded my head. I thought maybe he would leave sooner if it looked like that I believed him, and honestly, I didn't really want to antagonize a weirdo when I was alone in a hotel. I just tried to go along with it. He then told me that he's saving up for a sophisticated camera so that he could have photographic evidence of the earth being flat. This guy was saving up over $1,000 for a camera just to try and prove that the earth was flat. I mean, come on. Eventually, a big group of people came to check out, and he finally walked away. He came back about 10 minutes later and said to me,
"You know, most people don't have an open mind like you do. I'm glad you're so willing to learn and consider new information. Can I take a picture with you?"
And as he raised his phone camera up to snap it, I shouted at the top of my lungs, "No!" A million mental images of my face appearing on flat earth websites and social media pages flashed before my eyes, and I was nearly frozen in fear. And while he was disappointed, he did leave nonetheless. 20 minutes later, I have a guest come to the front desk and say to me, "Excuse me, miss, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a man outside harassing people. He's out there shouting about planets and ice walls, and he's screaming this to anyone who walks by." I let out a deep sigh and I looked at him. I lowered my voice and I said, "Sir, he stood here and preached the same thing to me for over 2 hours. If he isn't following people into their cars or hurting them, there's not a whole lot I can do. I'm not going to invite that man back inside." Thankfully, the guest understood and assured me that he was just standing out there preaching and not actually hurting or stalking people. But man, what a day. After that altercation, I was just shocked to realize that flat earthers aren't just part of an inside joke. They are, in some cases, very serious. Yeah, that guy is actually crazy, because every ounce of science points to the earth being round. You have to be either ignorant or just a seriously misguided individual to actually come to the conclusion that the earth is flat and that the government is hiding it from all of us. And Gary in this story seriously needs to get a reality check. But even that, if he really did just think that the earth is flat and that's some kind of weird core belief that he has, then go for it. He's wrong, but go for it. Who cares? It's the fact that he was trying to push this on somebody else, as well as disrupting their ability to do their job. That, in my opinion, is right where he crossed the line, and he seriously should not have wasted everybody's time. Because the poor original poster just wants to do their job. They don't want to be preached to. They don't want to listen to your misguided theories and watch you try to do pretend math. Like, seriously, get a life. So hopefully, for the sake of the original poster, they don't have to deal with anything like this ever again. Because what they dealt with was absolutely ridiculous, and that guy was completely out of line. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My boyfriend's family doesn't want me around anymore, and it's all so confusing and I really don't know what to do. So I've been dating my boyfriend for about 6 months, and we have been official for about 4. Our relationship started out great. I got along with his aunt and uncle well, whom he lives with as well, and they were very welcoming to having me in their home at first and letting us hang out there. My boyfriend doesn't drive. His aunt and uncle are fine with driving him to work and appointments, but pretty much nowhere else. Due to this, it's just been a lot easier for me to go over there if we want to hang out. Recently, I had a day off, so I thought it would be nice to give my boyfriend's uncle a break and go pick up my boyfriend from work. We got back to his house and no one was around, so we hung out in his room till we heard someone come in. We went downstairs only to get yelled at by his uncle. I decided to go home, only for his uncle to get offended I wasn't staying for dinner. Now, since this incident, they've made it clear that though I'm invited for dinner every night, I am no longer welcome at their house outside of dinner. They stated that I'm only invited for dinner because they feel bad I don't have family here. I wasn't even allowed to stay later till the rows were plowed during a freak snowstorm and was forced to drive home in near blizzard conditions. Now, I try to be courteous when I'm there, and I try to be polite, ask them about their lives, and clean up after myself, and I also bring them wine in once in a while as a thank you, and I drive my boyfriend around a lot to try and give them a break. I genuinely appreciate them cooking as well as everything, but his aunt and uncle are very protective of him and have done everything for him since his dad passed away a few years ago. They let him move in, they cook for him, they clean for him, they got him jobs, and I feel like this could be part of the issue. So it's really a weird situation, and I honestly don't know what to do. Your boyfriend's family seems really toxic, and they're also really sheltering your boyfriend in a bad way. For some context, the original poster's boyfriend is 24 years old, and on top of that, they don't drive, nor do they take care of their own cooking and cleaning and all this other stuff, which honestly, by that age, you really should have that figured out. It's also crazy to me that they wouldn't let you stay over during a snowstorm. Like, that is not only really dangerous, but it's also incredibly irresponsible. And if I was in your shoes, I probably would not want to go over there anymore, especially with your boyfriend basically being babied and having everything taken care of. If he really cared, he would stand up for you and say, hey, wait a second, there's a snowstorm going on outside. She's absolutely staying until it clears up. And also, you're not obligated to eat at your aunt and uncle's house. The fact that you left because they were freaking out and yelling at each other is, in my opinion, completely reasonable. And for them to get offended by you not wanting to stick around in that kind of hostile environment is really weird in my opinion. So I think maybe it's time to have a serious conversation with your boyfriend, because his aunt and uncle are being really weird towards you, and it's honestly time for something to change. My husband cheated on me when I was pregnant and lied to me repeatedly for years, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So before my husband met me, he was in a serious 3-year relationship. She cheated on him and would gaslight him when he tried to investigate. He eventually was able to find proof before ending things and moving on. When we met, he told me that cheating was a big insecurity for him, and he had trust issues as a result. I promised him that I was not designed that way and that everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. I promised him for as long as we're together, I would remind him just how amazing of a man he was. And I did just that for 9 years without fault. My husband has clearly expressed over the years how I helped him overcome this trauma and showed him what an amazing man he truly is. And our lives and personal lives have never been better, honestly. Also, during this time, he's talked about how dishonorable cheating is. He calls cheaters the scum of the earth. I've listened to rants and tirades about the kind of people cheaters must be. He has made his feelings about cheating very clear at this point, and I definitely was on board with him in that regard. He started streaming video games at the same time I got pregnant. He was staying up until middle hours of the night without ever coming to bed. He was very disengaged with me during my pregnancy. He was rude, thoughtless, and frankly inconsiderate to my needs as a wife, as well as a pregnant mother to his unborn child. This behavior only got worse, and I knew something was wrong because it was so unlike him. But lo and behold, it was because he was cheating on me. He was selectively deleting his search history and only leaving things he wanted me to see. However, Google activity tracks everything, and he wasn't deleting that actively, which showed me what was really happening. It showed him creeping on scandalous fan profiles, if you know what I mean, that only certain people can access. He would then go to promiscuous streamer channels while they were live and engage with female content creators, looking into several shady and promiscuous Reddit pages, and this went on for 2 years. I tried to put an end to things without directly calling his character into question. I would ask him what he was doing late at night, and he denied any wrongdoing. I asked him to be respectful of me and not look at promiscuous female streamers, and he said of course. He would then go back to his search history weeks after the fact sometimes, and still keep deleting things out of there that he thought would make him look poor. The entire time, he promised and reassured me that our boundaries were clear and he was being faithful. He spent 2 years lying to me directly to my face. He would gaslight me time and time again, and every time this happened, a piece of me would really fall apart. After 2 years, my hope that I would suddenly become interesting enough came to a close. I finally finally confronted him. He tried to gaslight me again. After his ridiculousness subsided, we had the chance to talk, and he admitted to me that he cheated. He won't give me details to the extent of what happened. He just keeps saying that everything I've brought forward to him is the extent of what fully happened. It's been a month, and he keeps reminding me about how he knows he messed up and will spend the rest of our lives fixing it with me. He tells me he knows how I feel and why I now feel insecure in our marriage and my trust with him. He says he understands when I tell him that now I feel less attractive. I just can't move on. I just don't know how someone whose heart was so broken from being cheated on is capable of doing that exact same thing to the woman of his dreams and mother of his child. What should I do? First off, this is an awful situation. Here you have a husband that you thought was going to be dedicated to you, but he's clearly been messing around and chatting with other women online, as well as going to sketchy, promiscuous sites that really are not a place that a married man should be going to. So there's really no good excuse in my book that would excuse this type of behavior. Like, it's seriously messed up, and you definitely deserve a lot better than that. So hopefully you're able to find some kind of solution with this, because you said it right. This guy had already been cheated on. He knows exactly how painful this is for someone, and the fact that he would do that to you still, even after all these years, is, in my opinion, a massive red flag that you absolutely should not ignore. My coworker and I had to escort a drunken man back to his hotel room after he had one too many drinks and couldn't find his way out of the stairwell, and it honestly was pretty funny overall. Here's what happened. Last night was one of the more interesting nights I've had at a hotel, and I honestly blame it on the full moon. I've gotten liars, I've gotten complainers, I've gotten the unprepared and the faulty equipment. I've also got the booked to the wrong hotel type of people, but at the end of this night, I got the drunks. We've had a ship crew staying with us since November. They're nice guys, they really are. They're leaving soon to take their ship elsewhere. The majority of them thought today was going to be their last day in the hotel, and a chunk of the crew decided to go out and have a few drinks to commemorate. They left at around 6:00 p.m. My shift ended at 11 o'clock, but I have a terrible habit of staying way after I clock out to talk with a night auditor. Now, that terrible habit has come in handy for her, as she sometimes gets guests who come down to flirt with her. She's about 10 years younger than me, so her mean gene hasn't kicked in yet, so I act as a buffer for her from time to time. I was especially useful last night when our ship crew came back around midnight and they were absolutely hammered. The night auditor and I were at the desk when we saw them stumbling through the parking lot. There were 5 who went out. One was stone cold sober, and you could see the annoyance on his face as he walked ahead of everyone else. Another guy was incredibly drunk, actually could walk in a straight line, but that line was just perpendicular to where he needed to go. Then there was a guy who we will call Lumberjack. That's obviously not their real name, partly because he was dressed like one, and partly because it describes how he walked back into the hotel. It's like he was trying to remember how to use all his limbs all at once. Anyways, all the guys made it back into the hotel without falling or bumping into anything. No one was obnoxious. They just couldn't walk correctly. They all headed straight for their rooms, and I wished them a safe journey up the elevator and continue with my chat with the night auditor. 6 minutes later, we heard a loud beep from our stairwell intercom behind the front desk. It scared the ever-living heck out of us because no one ever uses it. Thankfully, I remembered how to operate it, so I went over to see who needed our assistance. I say into the speaker, "Hello?" and I was met with heavy breathing. This repeated several times before myself and the night auditor decided that we should go up and see who was there. We had a suspicion that it was one of the drunks who had just walked in, but we didn't know what state we'd find them in. We were so incredibly nervous, but we both agreed that we would be braver with each other. We walked cautiously up the stairs. The higher we got, the more we could hear labored breathing, as well as dry heaving. To avoid startling whoever was there, I let out a few timid hellos and still got no response. The distress call came from the 3rd floor stairwell. The night auditor and myself arrived to see no one was there, but the sounds of someone being sick were louder than ever. We soon looked up to see Lumberjack leaning over the wall of the 4th floor stairs, which is odd because his room is on the 3rd floor. The night auditor looks up and says, "Are you okay?" And the Lumberjack replies by saying, "Yes, ma'am," which really was his catchphrase of the night. Through some other intelligible grunts and drunken gestures, he assured us that he was okay and didn't need any assistance. So we retreated back to the front desk, but there was no way we were going to take his word for it though. So we planned to go back up after a few minutes. And so we did. We went back up the stairwell, only for me to then round the corner and stumble upon him slumped over on the 3rd floor stairs. I held my breath waiting for signs of life, and thankfully they came quickly with his signature heavy breathing. The night audit and myself took took turns trying to wake him up. He flashed his bloodshot eyes at us and gave us a few more yes ma'ams before agreeing to let us help him into his room just down the hall. The image of us two shrimpy little women trying to hold up this tree of a man from pinballing down the hall was hilarious to watch on camera later on when it was all done and over with. And I'm just glad that it was the two of us there, because I don't think either one of us could have done this on our own. But we got it done. We got him into his room, then later we put together a hangover package of sorts just for him. He's been in his room all day. There was even a note about this whole incident on our communications board. Our general manager commended our quick thinking. The front office manager and I both did wellness checks on him. When I called him tonight during my shift, he said he has no memory of even coming back to the hotel and could only imagine what he had done while he was drunk. But I assured him that he was the most polite drunk I've ever come across. But hopefully in the future, he's a little bit more careful about how much he drinks. That way he can avoid this type of ordeal altogether. What a funny situation to be stuck in. I can't imagine having to look over and see these two women trying to escort this guy back into his hotel room. This seriously could have been a lot worse, and he could have been one of those grumpy, angry drunks who could have been very angry and very grumpy and possibly even violent. So with all things considered, I think the night auditor as well as the original poster absolutely got off easy. I said something awful to my fiance in the heat of the moment, and I really feel horrible about it, and I seriously don't know what to do. My fiance and I have been together for almost 5 years now, and our anniversary is coming up soon. We met in our last year of college and have been joined at the hip ever since. One of our first serious conversations when we started dating was about our thoughts on marriage, as well as kids, where we'd live, how our lives would fit around that, etc. To be fair, it was more so one of those honeymoon, head over heels, this is gonna be so exciting talks, but we never really meant it. We would periodically bring up different bits, saying stuff like, I can't wait to be living in the countryside, or stuff like that, random bits as they came up over the course of our relationship. Our plans, albeit idealistic, seemed solid. Last night, after a bit of invitation writing together, we had some wine and had a long chat about what we are looking forward to the most in married life. She said that she can't wait to have a home that we own and not rent. The reason being is so that we can go off for months at a time and travel around Europe without having to worry about losing our place, as well as constantly moving. I made a joke about our kids' piecemeal education and how they'd surely have that from much of the chopping and changing of schools. She didn't really look at me or laugh when I said that. A few more glasses of wine later, we go to bed. While cuddling to sleep, she whispered to me, I don't think I want kids. And when she said that, I just kind of lost my mind. I didn't yell or scream, I just left. I got dressed and started to leave. She was calling after me, saying we can talk about this and to come back to bed. And I really regret it, but I called her a manipulator just like her mother. Now, I won't get into it here, it's just way too personal, but her mother is an awful, awful person. I really do want to blame the wine for what I said, but that's not fair. I slept on the couch and woke up feeling like garbage. I still do. My fiance won't talk to me. She's barely even looked at me. I know I heard her saying that, but I'm also hurt too. And I don't want to talk about this with anyone that we might know. Honestly, my brain is fried, and I think I'm trying to justify what I said. What should I do? I think the obvious first thing that you really need to do is just apologize. I think you need to go back to her and be like, look, I'm sorry for what I said. Obviously, you were shocked by her suddenly being like, hey, guess what? I don't want to have kids. And this is after having so many conversations about having kids. Like, the timing definitely did not seem right. And while yes, you were probably devastated by her saying that, it does not give you the right to then talk to her in that manner. I think that kind of personal attack is completely unwarranted and absolutely out of line. So hopefully you can come to some kind of agreement between the two of you and you're able to move forward with some kind of confidence in your relationship. Because otherwise, I can see you sleeping on the couch for a lot longer than just this night. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.